To the July 23rd, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting tonight. And we have some really, really special people tonight. First of all, Pastor William Johnson from the Roswell Street Baptist Church will lead us in our invocation. And then we have a really special group leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So with that, Pastor Johnson, if you'll come up. And those who are willing and able, please stand.
So grateful to be here with you all on behalf of Pastor Michael Lewis, the senior pastor of Roswell Street. Glad to be here. William Johnson, associate pastor over local missions. What a privilege. Let's look to the Lord. Gracious Father, Lord, we come before you, thanking you, Father, for this gathering of people, Lord God. I pray your blessings, Lord God, in your hands to be mightily upon, Lord God, those that are sitting and anticipation of what the leaders will bring forth, Lord God. And we just pray your blessings, Lord God, that you will give wisdom and direction, Lord God, to those that are making decisions. And Lord God, we pray that everything that is said and done, Lord God, would honor you. Lord God, thank you so much for loving us. And we ask this in your son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. And if I could have Boy Scout Troop 405 from Powder Springs come up here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You just come right up here. All right. Just sort of get in a formation there and look at the flags right here behind you. Just lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance whenever you're ready. And you can give the Scout salute whenever you want. Back here, guys. Back here, guys. Turn around. Turn around. There you go. Now we're okay. Ready? Scout salute. All right. Go. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay.
Good job.
Unsalute. Thanks, gents. Thanks for having us tonight. And remember to come back and ask questions of your commissioner during public comment. Okay. With that, let's just get right into the meat of the meeting tonight. The first item on the agenda is we have several public hearings. The first one is to conduct the third public hearing on the 2019 proposed property tax increase as defined by Georgia law. So, Bill, I believe you have a couple comments first.
Yes, sir. I'm going to just go over the calendar just to discuss where we've been and kind of how we got here. So briefly, we had our advertisement in the MDJ on July 1st. We had our first public hearing on July 9th, our second public hearing on July 16th, and our third and final public hearing is tonight, and we're going to be asking the board to consider adopting the proposed millage after the completion of the public hearing. And with that being said, sir, here are the funds that receive property tax revenues and the associated millage rates that were adopted for 2018. And tonight we are proposing millage rates for 2019, and they are identical to the ones that were proposed and adopted in 2018. So with that, sir, I ask you that the board open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And the ground rules, same, unlimited number of speakers, 3 minutes per speaker. And please, when you come up here, let us know who you are and where you live. So with that, I now declare this third public hearing open on the 2019 proposed property tax increases defined by Georgia law. So who's the first? Amy, please, come on.
Hi, everybody knows I'm Amy Barnes from Marietta. I looked at the cost of training, and I understand that all of the surrounding communities are essentially poaching us for our dollars and resources that we carefully spend training our police and fire department personnel. And I back the wage raise for the public safety personnel. Because if you look at $100,000 or however much it is to spend training and on-the-job training, well, when Brookhaven comes in and they snatched all that money that we've spent. So I want to thank the commissioners for having the mindset and the ability and the wherewithal to look into this issue, a very serious issue that literally could cost us our very lives. So I want to encourage you guys that you guys are doing the right thing with that wage hike. We need that. Our lives depend upon it. Our safety depends on it. And I think if we keep in the communication loop, we have this wonderful new police department website that shares with people what the department is doing. We keep that up, we will continue to have support. So thank you again.
I know. Please, anybody else want to discuss, sir?
My name is Walter Beamer. I live at 3524 West Hampton Drive, not very far from the Avenue West. I live just off of Burnt Hickory Road. I am a member of Kelly Gambrell's district, and I know just about everybody on the commission, with the exception of Commissioner Cupid. We've never been introduced. However, today I would like to speak as a citizen, a property owner, and a taxpayer. I would like to encourage the commissioners to carefully examine the budget and make sure that the budget is affordable and that the taxes for supporting the budget should be no more than is necessary to pay for the budget. I am fortunate I am a person with enough of a retirement income that I can deal with any kind of taxes you guys want to put on us. However, I know people, property owners, who can barely afford paying taxes as they are. They live just on Social Security. And for people like this, it is very important that you make sure that you don't tax the property owners any more than is necessary to pay for the expenses of the county next year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, obviously I encourage everybody to come speak, but remember, there's going to be two parts to the public hearing tonight. One will be on the millage and then one on the budget. So, but I'm not going to restrict your comments. Just want you to know this right now, primarily we're addressing the millage rate.
This is the budget. Is that okay if I
Yeah,
speak now?
I'd rather you wait until we do the budget part. That way your remarks are applicable to the subject at hand. Anybody else like to come up, comment on the millage rate? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Nathan Adams. I'm a resident of Cobb County, live in Mapleton, Georgia. I'm also the executive director of a statewide group called Georgia Taxpayers United. Well, it's another year in Cobb County, another tax hike. This morning or this afternoon, I just spent my lunch break delivering several hundred petitions to your office. Same words as last year, more signatures, and we have at least one new commissioner receiving those petitions this year. You know, looking at this chart, I see some talk about the millage rates. I see some mention of the digest. What I don't see is any mention of the bottom line impact to taxpayers. The proposed millage rate for the M&O budget is a $12 million tax hike on property owners. And as one gentleman astutely pointed out, that's just the maintenance and operation budget. That doesn't include all of the other millage rates where you are, in fact, proposing tax hikes. In Georgia, we have something called what I call the Property Taxpayers Bill of Rights. It's a law that forces local governments to tell the truth about such tax hikes. And while our chairman likes to disparage that law, I, for one, see it as a blessing to taxpayers around the county and around the state. I think we should keep the Taxpayers Bill of Rights and also restore it so that you're forced to advertise the truth about all of your millage funds and not just the maintenance and operation fund. Every year, the Cobb County government submits a survey to the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. That survey includes county data on employees, the min-max salaries, salary ranges, the number of people employed per job description, et cetera. So I did some research on that and a little back-of-the-napkin calculation. Using the minimum or starting pay and the number of employees, I came up with a number of $51,000 per year per Cobb County government employee. I also did some research on taxpayers, and according to cobbcounty.org, the median per capita income for taxpayers is $34,000. So using those rough estimates, Cobb County government employees, on average, make at least $17,000 more than Cobb County taxpayers. So it begins to beg the question, who is in charge of who? Who's the public servant in that scenario? I was raised to believe that we, the citizens, were the ones being served by the public government. So I thank you for your time, and I encourage you to vote no on any tax hike.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, last call. Seeing none, I now declare this third public hearing on the 2019 proposed property tax increases defined by Georgia law closed. And that, make a motion that the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution settling the 2019 millage rates for the Cobb County General Fund, Fire Fund, Bond Fund, Debt Service Fund, the Cumberland Special Service District 2 Fund, and the Six Flags Special Service District Fund, and authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents. Do I have a second? Second. Okay, the comments from the board. See none, I call the question. And it passes 3-2 with Commissioners Gamble and Odd in opposition. Okay. Now we're going to have our second public hearing.
Sure, we have the Board of Education item first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, that's right. So with that, I now make a motion that the Board of Commissioners adopt the Board of Education's resolution establishing the 2019 countywide school tax for maintenance and operation of schools, 18.9 mils. Countywide school tax for construction bonds, 0 mils. Marietta Property Annex 1995 to 2004 at 0 mils, as required by law, and authorize the chairman to execute the millage resolution from the Cobb County Board of Education. We have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0. Okay, now we will conduct the third public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. And Bill?
Yes, sir. So I was asked to, I'm going to go over, again, this is our schedule, which mirrors the millage schedule, so all those dates are the same. The only exception to this is on July 16th, we did hold a budget class hosted at Commissioner Cupid in the board's direction to the public, and we did have a pretty good attendance on that, and there was some good feedback, and we were able to incorporate some of their questions and concerns into some of the slides that I'm about to show you. Okay, so I'm going to skip through this and just touch on the major topic areas that we wanted to address. So one of the topic areas that we wanted to address today is within the General Fund's operating fund, there's a unit called General Fund Contingency Unit, and there's also a unit called General Fund Admin. The total of those two units equate to approximately $82 million. So within the General Fund Contingency Unit, these are all the expenses that would come out of there. And the very first line is stadium debt service. And having some conversations with the board this week, we're looking at making a modification to that in future budgets where we're going to put that in its own unit called debt service to not be confused with General Fund Contingency if that's agreeable to the board, but we'll work through that as we go through the next budget process. The amount won't change. This is basically our standard debt service on the stadium bonds. But just for clarity with the public and the board, we wanted to make sure that that was clearly identified as this is the stadium bond debt service. There's a lot of funding sources that feed into that, but we didn't want this to be commingled or confused with the general fund contingency unit that we have in place. All the items below this are contingencies. There is another contingency. One of the areas that we talked about in previous presentations is we are going to be doing a 7% pay increase to sworn and certified personnel in public safety. those contingencies are housed within those specific departments. For example, sheriff, their 7% is housed within their department as a contingency, and for PD, theirs is housed there, and fire and so on. So that's how we have established those. And the rest of these, the 4% that you see here is for all non-certified. So we have it in contingency to allow a little bit more control of how these are distributed. Because when we start this budget process, and actually our last personnel snapshot is taken in May, by the time we get to the last payroll of 2020, which is when these contingencies will need to be used, those rosters could look a little bit different than they did back in May. Meaning you could have different vacancies, departments can move a little bit. But with that being said, the only thing that these can be used for without a Board of Commissioners agenda item is specifically for the areas addressed here. So for example, the 4% merit can only be used for merit, and it will be moved on the last payroll of FY20 to accommodate any shortfalls caused by the merit, which is exactly what it's there for. One of the other items to note is in our previous presentations, we did have a line as a contingency. It was employee morale, welfare, and recreation. It was $375,000, and based on some of the comments we received at previous meetings and conversations with the board, we have now broken that down and eliminated that line altogether, but added 2 line items that equate to the same amount. Internal audit support contingency of $187,500, as well as a Keep Cobb Beautiful support contingency for the exact same amount. Those totaled the $375,000 that was in there originally. And with that being said, those were the major changes in this presentation. So I wanted to let you know, but I'm going to continue to go through the next unit, which is general fund admin, because we're talking about the $82 million. But this general fund contingency unit totals $33,672,823. And the other part of the $82,000.
Hold on, Bill.
Yep,
hold on.
sorry, sir.
Commissioner Burrow has a question.
Yes, ma'am, sorry.
Going back to the first line, stadium debt service,
Yes, ma'am.
that is in the general fund. We moved it from debt service to general fund. I apologize for my voice. And it does get the homestead exemption.
Yes.
So why are you going to identify it as debt service now?
It is going to be a debt service line item, regardless of whether we have it in the debt service fund, which in this case, these are revenue bonds and are not eligible for GO debt service, which is what we typically have with our parks bonds. So that millage is not eligible to be applied against these. This is a little different because we have lots of funding sources that contribute to this. The Braves, we have the Cumberland Special Service Districts 1 and 2, we have hotel motel tax. So this is going to be housed within the general fund. Those revenues come into the general fund to pay for this, as well as the Braves contribution, and there still is a general fund property tax component that feeds into the debt service. But just to clarify, the reason we are looking at moving it, it's going to remain in the general fund in the future, but we're going to put it in its own unit, not to be confused with these contingency items. We thought that would be give a little bit more clarity to this. When you get the budget documents, you're still going to see general fund contingency unit. You'll see contingencies listed, and you'll see a line for debt service, which is simply the stadium bonds. So it's not going to change the total. It was just trying to make that a little bit more clear to the public as we move forward.
And you have another slide further along that breaks down the stadium
Yes, ma'am.
costs.
And if
that
you'd
you're
like,
gonna
I could
show.
show that now, if
Yeah.
that would be beneficial. Okay, absolutely. Okay, so we talked about the debt service of $22.4 million, and this is the breakdown as we go forward. So this is what we budgeted for FY20. We have the Braves annual contribution of $6.1 million. We have our CSSD 1, which is our Cumberland Special Service District 1, which is the $3 per room night fee. That's going to be contributing just over $1 million to the debt service, as well as the CSSD2, which is the Cumberland Special Service District 2. This is the property tax component to the Special Service District. They're going to be contributing just over $7 million. And then we have a 8% hotel motel countywide tax, which is shared between the county and the Galleria Authority. This is out of the county's portion, and $2.7 million of that tax will be allocated to funding the debt service on the stadium bonds in FY20. And the last piece of that, outside of the general fund property tax, is the car rental tax, which is $575,000. And then again, the general fund property tax makes up the difference. So if you remember back to the original presentation, we were looking at $6.4 million of general fund property tax, and we've been able to reduce that over the last couple of years, and we continue to see that trend downward because of the growth that we've seen in revenue sources related to in and around the stadium area. Okay, so is the commissioner, is that sufficiently addressed? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, now I'm going to skip back to the last piece because we did talk about the $33 million here. And then the second piece of that, because again, the total of the general fund contingency unit and general fund admin units equate to roughly $82 million. So we were asked to break these out specifically so you could see everything that's coming out of these. The biggest item is obviously the transit subsidy, and then we have our House Bill 49 payments. This is the duplication of service payments that we have, our agreement, 10-year agreement with the cities. And then risk allocation. As a county, we're self-funded. All funds contribute into the risk fund, our insurance fund, based on loss history. General fund has a piece of that, water, fire, so on. All funds contribute into that. And then we have our undesignated capital replacement. Actually, about 500,000 of that is designated, and then we have 3 million that would be undesignated. DOT local share, this is our local match on grants that are currently in existence and approved by the BOC. Printer and PC replacement. This is, again, all county staff that has PCs. All funds or all employees, regardless of which fund you have, pay into this transfer that go to countywide PC replacement. So this is based on the actual number of desktops, laptops, surfaces, what have you, that have to be replaced on an annual basis. And I believe it's not all PCs are replaced in the same year, but we're on a continuous cycle of replacements. One of the items that was approved last year is the Unified Court Case Management System. This is being paid out over several years. General fund's contributing to our Capital Projects Fund, which is going to, again, facilitate this long-term program. Additional pension contribution. We have a line item in here for $2 million. If you remember, the Board of Commissioners in FY19 approved an additional contribution of $2 million. We have this in here either as an additional pension contribution, but more than likely what you're going to hear in August is a presentation from the Pension Board of Trustees that's going to discuss reducing the assumed rate of return on our plan. Our current assumed rate of return is roughly 7.5%. Well, it is 7.5%. We've looked at the national averages. We've had a lot of input from our financial advisors, and that is simply no longer the case. The national median for pension plans is 7.25%, and that is an increase of $2 million to the annual required contribution. But that will be at the board's decision as whether they choose to accept that recommendation or we just use it as an additional contribution, but it will remain in contingency or in this account until the board designates appropriately. And then we have our annual stadium capital maintenance. Again, this $1.29 million is what the county's portion of this. The Braves has a match that is 100% of whatever we contribute, and that can only be used when the county, the Braves, and the Gallery Authority sign off on this for long-term capital maintenance projects related to the stadium. We have several others on here. Enterprise Content Management System. Again, this is a long-term ongoing project through IS, and this houses all of our documents in an online location. We have our solid waste subsidy for our post-closure landfill. We have memberships for ARC, roughly 878,000. And then we have some other items. We have GIS 5-year plan. Again, this is an ongoing cost, and all departments that benefit from this facilitate transfer in for this portion. Again, this is the general fund piece. We have OpenGov contract, which will be on the agenda for later this year. This is a new budgeting software that we're very excited about. We went ahead and put the placeholder in here because this is a conversation we've had with some of the board members as well as the public in the budget class. This is going to be a tool that's going to be more interactive with the departments as well as the citizens, so we can have this ongoing budget conversation throughout the process versus you're waiting to get a report. You know, every so often you'll be able to have live access to see the updates. You'll be able to see the requests. You'll be able to see any modifications, justifications, and you can drill down to whatever level you'd like to see. And we would eventually like to make some of that or a lot of that information publicly facing so the citizens can be engaged and have, we can answer their questions as well, but they'll have more detailed information as we go forward. Mobile data computers. This is, again, ongoing costs each and every year. This is our TANS debt service. This is just the general funds piece. We had a lobbyist in there for 2019. This was asked to be continued as we move forward into 2020. The board approved an agenda item for cybersecurity in FY19. This is the ongoing cost to maintain that cybersecurity as we move forward. We have a parking deck subsidy. If you remember, we had $370,000 in there last year for parking deck subsidy. By working with LAS to improve those operations, we were able to reduce that down to 116. That 116 is for the proposed increases that LAS asked for, the employee rates to go up. The chairman, working through the board, had asked that those remain flat. That is the delta between what they asked and what we have currently. That will not be transferred if we do better than anticipated. So meaning if we have if we have additional revenue from employee parking or public parking that will offset that, this will be a conversation, will be moved as needed. LAS does have incentives built into their contract to incentivize them to improve the operations and revenue generation, but those will also go to offset this subsidy if we do not need it based on improved operations. We have other memberships, ACCG, which is roughly 67,000, unemployment insurance, grant supplements, as well as the Qantas Flag program. So that for this unit, general fund admin unit, is 48 million, and the two units combined are your 82 million that we were asked to cover. But again, the detailed list is here. So if there's any questions about any one of these specific items, we're happy to answer those at this time.
Okay. Any
Okay.
questions?
I have a lot.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Bill, I do have a lot of questions.
Sure.
And I want to say this is not directed at you, but being an accountant myself, the devil is always in the details.
Sure.
Let's just start at the top. The transit subsidy.
Yes, ma'am.
Under your, I'm not sure which, okay. Here you have 18,951,745,
Yes.
but in the transit department breakdown
Mhm.
by department, you've got 19,751,000.
Yes, there's additional transit subsidies as we move forward. So this is the general fund piece of that. If you remember, we talked about CSSD 1, the $3 room night. They contribute to the circulator. So that's your delta between these two numbers.
Okay.
Okay?
Then capital replacement.
Yes,
You've got 3,593,000. Yet if you go to the back of the book, I think it's on page 41, we have a capital plan listed out.
Yes.
Which then has 10 items? 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 10 items, I believe, on there. That capital says it's 12,159,000.
Yes.
However, it's not on his slides.
Right, this one right here,
Yep.
12 million.
Okay, 12 million, okay, 115, but you've got it detailed out
I do.
in the back. But if I look at what you have on this sheet,
Yep.
it only totals 10,218,000.
That's correct, because what you have on that sheet is just the general fund component. So like we talked about, a lot of these projects are shared by other funds. So water would have a piece of that, fire would have a piece of that as well. So all these funds contribute to this capital projects fund of $12 million, and it's based on the usage. So one of the perfect example items will be printer and PC replacement. So obviously water has employees that have to have PCs replaced. They're going to contribute into this fund as well. So that $12 million is all funds contributing into this capital projects fund where these long-term projects are conducted.
Okay, let me find my sheet. But, like the mobile data computers,
Yes.
on this list, it says 400,000, yet on your detailed list, it's 550
Yes.
as being required. So
We
you're
have
saying
some
that's,
from fire as well. So fire has a piece of that pie. So that's, again, it's based on usage of which funds contribute. So when we gave you the detailed version from general fund, that's only the general fund piece, and there's multiple pieces that feed into the capital projects.
but should we be commingling fire department requirements with the general fund
So-
since the fire department's funded separately?
So we're not. This is how we're doing this, is you have a project based on usage or need. So when IS has, or anybody has a project that has a shared component, so let's say in this case, the mobile data terminals. So there's a need for fire and there's a need for general fund. It's under one contract that the board's approved, and then who contributes is based on the need at that time. So again, yes, you're going to have, fire's going to clearly have identified their 100K that they're going to contribute out of the fire fund as a transfer out. General fund will have their 400K, and they'll both say mobile data terminals, and they'll go into 380, and those items will be purchased out of 380, and then allocated, and then put to the proper use. So that same thing with PC replacements is we get a better deal versus having a contract for general fund, contract for fire, for water. We get one contract, we make all of our purchases, but that purchase is identified to specific users, and that's how we get the allocation. So like with a lot of these, we work closely with IS to say, okay, this is the cost for, let's say, mobile data terminals. I need the breakdown between, you're gonna buy X number for fire and X number for general fund so we can budget appropriately.
Okay, so I guess next year I'd like to see, you know, what we're planning for just the county and then also fire, so that
Sure.
way it makes sense, because I think that will help explain, you know, our folks at home are looking at these numbers and saying they don't make sense, and I can understand how,
So to
They're
help
seeing
with
that.
to help with that, one of the things that we could do is we could post on our site is a list of our interfund transfers that tie to this, because that's going to be where these come from. Is that you're moving money from general fund and fire fund into 380. So there'll be a transfer out, and it'll say mobile data terminals general fund, and then you go down to fire and say mobile data terminals for fire, and then we can post that for you, and definitely happy to provide it to you electronically.
okay.
Okay.
And then also there was a discrepancy in the transfer out funds, but I guess it came back to the 515,000 that was allocated to DOT.
Yeah.
But I do not see that DOT allocation anywhere.
Okay. I'll have to
So-
take a look at what you're specifically talking about. on that one.
Okay, okay. And then just a general comment on the first page,
Of the,
the 33,672,000.
just want to make sure I got to the right side.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
The internal audit support contingency.
Yes.
I hope the board realizes that we're increasing that departmental's funding by 45.7% with this increase,
Well,
which I thought was quite a lot, all things considering. And then also the litter control support contingency. There is not a department breakdown for Keep Cobb Beautiful, so I cannot tell what their current department expenditures are.
Sure.
Just need to know that.
Okay.
And then also just a general question, if you go to your, the 14 million one, where you show what came in and what came out for the year,
I'm not sure.
the highlighted one,
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, perfect.
okay.
Yep,
We show on here the library partial restoration
yes.
of 800,000. Now, Chairman, I understand we talked back in April, May that we were gonna cut this down to 400,000, and I understand the library was fine with that. But I'm not seeing it on the contingency for this year. And when I look at the department details, I'm not seeing that 400,000 being allocated to the libraries.
well, it wouldn't be a contingency because we had 800 in there, so in fact, we've cut the library by $400,000.
But again, I'm not
This is a
seeing,
line item from last year.
So Commissioner, to answer your question, what we've done is we took their departmental requests and so when you look at that, you'll see the requests. And I think we provided that in detail as saying this is what they request. And then you see finance recommendations. I think it totals to just under 400,000, but it's 300 and change. And you'll see the finance column where we've added those into specific lines at their request. So what we did is rather than throw it in a contingency account for them, we took their departmental requests that they submitted and we said yes to those requests and we populated it in their line item budgets.
okay, I guess in the reports that I received, I didn't see that.
Okay, that's
So-
fine. I'm happy to resend
Okay.
that to you because that'll be one of that you'll see, because we sent the previous report showing all departmental requests, and then you'll see a column with finance recommendations as well as the department justification and finance comments. So that's the one, I'll make sure you have a copy.
Okay, I've got that
Yeah.
one, but as far as seeing it being actually rolled into.
Yeah, it's all rolled into their operating, but yes, I can provide you that detail without a doubt.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. That's all I had on these two slides.
All right. Any other questions? Okay, with that, I'll now open up this third public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. Again, unlimited number of speakers. You get 3 minutes. Just, if you'd let us know who you are and where you live, we'd appreciate it. So with that, I now declare this public hearing open.
And Chairman, I'm going to leave the summary slide up in case
Sure.
there's any question.
Hey, Amy Barnes again from Marietta. I find it interesting where he divides a little bit a lot of it into the debt service, and then there's some other small component. If the concern is how much is really the real number is, that should have been disclosed a long time ago. If there's any question on what the real number is and then he has to backtrack up here, that's not cool. We need the whole books open.
We have that is the number. It hasn't
It
changed.
should have happened a long time ago. I see the line item up on there. It's not on that screen. Death penalty / change of venue.
What?
there's a line item up there that says death penalty. Are we paying to kill people?
No,
come on,
I can tell you what that is, Amy.
Come on now.
Amy, Amy,
Right here.
Amy,
Amy.
But anyway,
Amy, look.
I mean, I don't know what the explanation for that is.
Well, you brought it up, and first of all, I just find your comment about killing people really inappropriate, okay?
All right.
But your point is, Bill, come up here.
He needs to open the books with the whole number, not just
Well-
what's up there.
This is called open and transparent government. It's a two-way street, Amy, all right?
Because there was a discussion
we're gonna-
about
we're gonna
the
explain to
main
you-
component for this.
We're gonna explain to
Anyway,
you where that number came from.
I'll talk to him later
No,
about
you're gonna
it.
stay right there, please, all right? You made some insinuations here, now we're gonna explain to you what that number is.
I can't hear.
It'll just take a second.
Okay.
All right. So I think what Amy's referring to is our storm debris, death penalty, and change of venue. So what these are basically three separate contingencies. I'm sorry, make sure I'm talking to the mic. So what we have is there's additional costs with any death penalty case. So we never know when those are going to come up, and also a change of venue, because like we had a few years ago where you're having to leave Cobb County and provide staff to facilitate those trials. So those could be unknown costs as we move forward. So we always have a contingency in there just in case we have one of those types of cases come forward, and the storm debris is self-explanatory. We use that based on small storm or larger storms that require cleanup as we move
Do you
forward.
remember how much that bill was? Because it was down in Brunswick, right?
It was significantly more than the contingency, sir.
Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks, Bill.
You're welcome, sir.
And please, thank you, appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Tanya Brinkley. I've been a Cobb County citizen since 1985. I live in Commissioner Lisa Cupid's district in Smyrna. I am retired from the U.S. Army, disabled veteran, and Georgia National Guard, and spent a career protecting and serving fellow citizens. I'm lucky I could spend a career doing what I already believe is my responsibility. So saying that, I'm here to advocate that my county government support grant funding for our applicable nonprofits in this year's budget. For over a year, I have served as a volunteer for the city of Smyrna to work community housing issues such as affordable housing and shelter for all people that want to live here. Our nonprofit agencies provide services for the people of our county that need services identified as critical needs by the Cobb County Commission via the chairman as homeless and ex-offenders, those in family poverty situations, and for health and wellness issues. Specifically, I would like to know that 100 to 200 unsheltered people of our county are receiving the help that they need. I want them to have services the same as all of us expect and want to take advantage of our county services offered. If Cobb County excludes nonprofits from receiving grants, then how does the county serve that population that needs services? So I'm afraid that the answer would be that the county doesn't. I can't find that acceptable, and that is why I dressed up tonight and decided to stand up and speak to you in this room tonight. It is completely unreasonable to have an expectation that our faith-based organizations bear the brunt of that service delivery. Volunteers like myself cannot manage the needs of these groups alone. Our contributions are helpful, but really only a Band-Aid. I am very concerned when people are out in the temperatures that are too hot, as they are now, too cold for people to be reasonably healthy. I worry the same people don't receive adequate resources to maintain their lives. When we exclude or marginalize anyone, we all suffer discomfort. So collectively, we can reach the solutions that eradicate homelessness in Cobb County, but we won't get near that goal if we don't support our nonprofits with funding. And thank you for allowing me to be heard.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am Natalie Rutledge, the Executive Director of Communities and Schools in Marietta, Cobb County, and thank you for funding the nonprofit grant last year. Thanks to your funding, we were able to support over 12,000 students and families in Cobb County, in the Cobb County School District and Marietta City Schools last year. This past year, CIS individually case managed over 550 at-risk students from dropping out of school. By providing resources, support, and programming that eliminated barriers for attendance, behavior, and coursework, 98% of our students were promoted or graduated from high school. In partnership with the Cobb County Libraries, our Read to Succeed literacy program provided over 11,000 books to children from birth to 18 years of age to create a home library, increase literacy rates, and develop a love of reading. 15,000 eighth graders and high school students participated in our financial literacy events, Reality U. Meeting national financial literacy standards, Reality U challenges middle and high school students to navigate their 26-year-old life with career options and earning potential based on their current GPA. This in-school field trip provides them with the realization that academic achievement supports fiscal health and wealth. Thanks to our partnerships with the Georgia Department of Education, Cobb County School District, and CIS National, we are expanding to Garrett Middle School with our site-coordinated integrated services of support. A few weeks ago, Communities in Schools of Marietta Cobb was designated as a State of Hope site by the Georgia Department of Family and Child Services. We know that it takes a holistic approach to help our students thrive in school, excel academically, and graduate college or career ready. At Communities at Schools, we do not work alone. All of us that are supported by the nonprofit grant work collaboratively together, and most of us currently partner with one or more Cobb County government agency to help reduce the impact of the problems that exist in our community. This grant helps us leverage funding from sources to expand the numbers that are served in our community. Your consideration to fund the nonprofit grant that has helped so many in the past is essential to the mission of all of us here tonight. We are in the business of building hope for children to have safe homes to grow in, hope for children to have a healthy start and a healthy future, hope for graduation and a successful future. And tonight, I hope you choose to fund the nonprofit grant to continue to be our partner in support of Cobb County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rutledge.
Good evening, Chairman and other distinguished commissioners. My name is Joel Cobb, and I'm a resident of Commissioner Cupid's district in Mapleton, and I rise tonight to speak about the budget in my personal capacity. As many of you know, I'm very active in the community, but that is not one of those hats I'm wearing tonight. I'm speaking just as me. I want to rise in support of the budget and the support that this commission is proposing to give to the employees of this county. Many of them, whether they patrol the streets, put out fires, put on the presentation we're seeing tonight, check our library cards, give us vehicle tag information, cut our grass on the medians, they're all performing a very valuable service, and oftentimes it's overlooked. And so I think it's high time they get the support and this being provided for by this budget. I also want to commend Mr. Volkman and the commission also for being nimble enough to recognize some changes that were suggested last week at the proposal for the budget. And I want to kind of encourage the commission to do the same thing tonight with two other ideas. The two previous speakers have risen to speak on behalf of the nonprofits being included, and I also join them in that idea. None of the nonprofits with which I work very directly would receive any benefit from this. This is not a case of self-interest. This is a case of wanting to promote a very conservative idea, that is to say, people who help those who are the most unfortunate, who have the least of these, and who have the least opportunities. And this also is locally being supported. These ministries oftentimes seek out to help as many people as they can, but oftentimes it's in the geographical area where they operate. This is all over Cobb County. This has been supported over the past few years, and there's absolutely no reason why we should not support it now. As a simple for instance, we provide as much as $1.4 million to support a golf course, or golf courses plural, in our budget. However, we're proposing to cut out this here. Now, I'm not trying to choose the golf course or attack the golf course whatsoever. I'm just making a point. It's 1.5 million. We're talking about $850,000 or $900,000 that will be used to support these ministries. And as you heard them speak before, these provide vital services for folks who have a lot of different challenges going on, whether it's homelessness, it could be addiction, issues of finding basic housing, clothing, and other needs, all of this county, regardless of whether they're in the North Cobb, South Cobb, East Cobb, or West Cobb. And this commission can help provide that. We have that motto that says expect the best. That's a great way to show it. The second thing I want to also support is to speak in favor of something we hear a lot about in the news, but we don't think much about, which is the U.S. Census. I mention that now because the budget we're speaking to is going to cover the period of time this census will be sent out to all the residents, when people will be coming around with clipboards and iPads to count their fellow citizens. This matters no matter where in this county you live, whether you're living in Cobb, North Cobb, South Cobb, East Cobb, or West Cobb, or what commission district you serve in. We as a county will suffer if we don't provide adequate resources. We may provide some resources, but we need to provide more. Many of the cities in Cobb are very aggressively seeking out to make sure they have a good count in their borders, and that's very smart because they realize that with that come federal dollars. We need to do the same thing in Cobb and not look to non-Cobb staff to help try to provide an accurate census count. It is important that although it comes from the federal government, it does function very critically with help and support of the local government, which is we are here. So I would encourage you as a long-term investment, both to help work with the nonprofits and restore that grant funding, the funding in the budget that's being given to them in the past, as well as increasing support for the census. Again, realizing that we have a very direct and material
Sir,
interest.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time.
Good evening, Chairman Boyce and Cobb Commissioners. My name is Missy Owen, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Davis Direction Foundation, a nonprofit in Cobb whose mission is to fight addiction and fuel recovery. First and foremost, I want to thank you for the support you've offered us in the past 3 years, allowing us to lease county property for our purposes and approving us to receive the nonprofit grant. You have not only supported us financially, but you have supported us in word and deed as well. You have partnered with us to educate parents all over the county with the Cope House and have pointed people in our direction for the services and support that we offer to those in need. You declared us a local, state, and national model, creating attention for us at the White House. You have been a large part of our success, and I sincerely appreciate all you have done for us. Moving forward, I'm asking you to reconsider the funding cuts to the nonprofits in Cobb. We are all working to address critical needs in our community, and if those needs are not met by the nonprofits, then the community will have to find a new way to meet those needs. Drug overdose is the #1 killer in our nation, and Cobb is unfortunately the leader in overdose deaths in all of Georgia. At the Zone, our recovery support organization, we are realizing over 3,000 visits on average per month. We are helping people in recovery to stay in recovery. We are also helping people who are seeking to find recovery to find the level of support they need in order to get well and well enough to sustain life on their own. Michael Botticelli, former director of the ONDCP, provided a formula while he was in office that for every day a person could remain in recovery, the local economy would realize $7 per day per person in recovery. Hypothetically speaking, that would mean that the DDF is providing services that would on an average month have 188 unique individuals come through our doors, and at $7 per day for 31 days of a given month, we would be helping to put over $40,000 back into the local economy by keeping people out of incarceration or rehabilitation at the taxpayer's expense. These people would be productive members of our community, giving back at the local level. The DDF has partnered with multiple organizations, government agencies, and other nonprofits throughout the county, and even partnered with the District Attorney's Office to create the Recovery Roundtable Leadership Council that strategically meets to collectively support recovery and let the right hand know what the left hand is doing in our community regarding addiction and recovery. We're working smarter and harder. There are very few grants that support the spending of operational dollars, and the Cobb County grant is one of these. The grant we received from you kept our doors opened, our lights on, our waters running, and our people in recovery. I am sincerely asking you to reconsider your decisions so that recovery after care in Cobb County can continue to be a reality and provide a future for people in recovery that my son never had the opportunity to engage in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Holko. I live in Marietta. I would really like to encourage you to continue supporting nonprofits in the budget. As you've heard from several speakers already, nonprofits in Cobb County provide a vast array of services to our most vulnerable populations. Do we really want to be the kind of county that leaves people out on the streets and leaves people out in the cold and unable to recover? Nonprofit funding has included homeless support, addiction recovery support, summer lunch programs for children in need, and for support for victims of domestic violence to get back on their feet. I would hate to consider that our county is one that doesn't think those things are important. Those things are important. And the $850,000 that was the line item in last year's budget had an economic impact of over $10 million. That's a fantastic return on investment. And just from a financial perspective alone, you should reconsider funding nonprofits in Cobb County. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi again. I'm Samantha Glass, and I'm from South Cobb, and as the president of the West Cobb Business Association, I work and am very heavily involved in the West Cobb community as well. Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Last week I spoke, but wanted to again thank you for hearing us and moving in a positive direction to address improvements that must be made to the compensation with our public safety. While I agree with all that has been proposed in regards to public safety for this budget session, and I encourage you to vote to pass all of those proposals on slate this evening, I do still believe that we have a ways to go yet. We still have too many sworn positions open in public safety. We have high standards and expectations for our public safety employees in Cobb, and we have some of the best there is, period. Therefore, our pay and benefits package must match the level of talent that we are seeking to hire and retain in this highly competitive market. Many of our police officers have only had an increase in pay in the past 11 years, while cost of living continues to rise, as you know. Therefore, it is very hard to argue that a 7% increase and the other proposals at this time are not only reasonable, they are well overdue. I appreciate your attention to the sign-on bonuses to bring trained and certified officers laterally to Cobb. However, I again ask you to continuously review funds to find future bonuses that will assist our current officers as a thank you to those who have stuck with us during this time of crisis. These heroes have worked tirelessly while underpaid, understaffed, and overworked, and they've still stayed loyal to Cobb County. In closing, since we all know that we still have progress to make here, I'm going to ask each of you to commit tonight to honestly and in a show of good faith to your public safety, pledge to work on a step and grade plan with the Chief's director and leadership so that the best plan is put into place to take care of this concern once and for all. Again, you're getting tired of seeing me, and believe me, none of us want to be here again in the coming months. So again, a simple pledge tonight from each of you would be a great show of faith that for not only the supporters here, but also for our officers who have been waiting and hoping for good things to come. I ask that you please make that pledge tonight so that we can support you in your decision to work on a step and grade plan in conjunction with public safety leaders and have it ready to be implemented by this time next year, if not sooner. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kim Peace Hill, and you all know who I am. I suppose I've been up here enough. But I live in Kennesaw, and since, gosh, what is it, Chairman, January that you started all your town hall meetings? I have been to a number of these meetings and the town hall meetings, and I've always been saying the same thing. Tonight I want to say thank you. I think I've yelled enough and wrote enough emails, and I want to thank you for answering them all of you. You've all been very patient with my stress level over this issue. But that being said, I'm not exactly ready to jump on any kind of handheld session of karaoke or kumbaya right now. There's so many people saying thank you, and I'm saying thank you as well. But I'm also asking you to please, and I'm echoing what Samantha just said. There's a lot of people right now that are very grateful for what you're going to be voting on tonight, but there's a lot of people who are also still a little bit concerned that this step and grade plan is not going to happen in spite of what we're being told. I would ask that you please not push that any further down the road, that you address it the way you have addressed the pay increase that you, or adjustment that you're going to be making with the 7% that's coming up, as well as the merit bonus that you've decided to implement. We've worked really hard to get here. A lot of us have been working very hard. I know Steve Gaynor worked harder than anybody to get his voice heard and to have this crisis addressed. And until we have enough officers and deputies in place to where all of the precincts have enough officers to cover all the beats in all the districts, as well as deputies in the jail, to make sure that we are sufficiently staffed at the jail, I think we will continue to remain in a crisis, especially if we continue to lose officers to other precincts and agencies, counties, city, municipalities, whatever, for better pay and benefits. So until the step-in grade is implemented, and I'm trusting you that it will happen, I think we will remain in a crisis. But I do again want to say thank you. I'm holding faith that you'll all do what's right next year about this time. I won't have to come back up and be yelling. I want to get back to doing the fun things. And Chairman, your meetings are not fun. Your town hall meetings might be informative, but I went to so many I could have probably stood up there and told you what was going on as well.
Sorry, your time's up.
But thank you, and look forward to not seeing you next year.
Okay, last call.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chairman Boyce. My name is Debbie Fisher, and I'm from East Cobb. And I thought it might be kind of fun, since everyone thinks I'm hard on you, to do some trivia. These are the numbers since you took office, Chairman. Budget has increased 87.6, expenses 75.5 million, personnel 40.6. The 1.7 mil increase resulted in $72 million in revenue versus the 60 we were told. You put 50 in the general fund. 22 is still somewhere out there. Where is the other 22 million? And when you have that much excess revenue from the prior year, why are we asking for more? Instead of giving taxpayers a break by rolling back the millage once again, employees are reaping the benefits. The total Cobb budget this year is $991 million, 8.9 short of $1 billion. Property tax revenue was 302, which is only 6.3 million more than our personnel costs. That makes no sense. With the merit increase, personnel costs top the tax revenue by 8.4 million. The 2020 budget increased 21.5 over 19 budget. Fire fund will top 100 million this year. Operating costs increased 10.5. Personnel without merit, 6.3. With merit, 21 million. General fund contingency, 4.4. General fund admin and contingency, 13.4. Total expenses increased 21.5 million. What were the personal perks that we gave personnel? We subsidized parking fees. We have one additional paid holiday. We have the merit increases, 100% match on hybrid pension plans, lower employee contribution for the police pension, which I don't disagree with. You took out the MWR, thank you. That was ridiculous. And the additional paid holiday, just calculating based on the $311 million that we'll have in personnel costs, 250 work days a year, is the equivalent 1.24 for that one holiday. I ask you, what do we get for the 72 million in increase, with another 12 million coming now, and that's just the general fund? As far as I can tell, we have new bus routes, Sunday service for the buses, Sunday service for libraries, more money for public safety officers, which is a big deal, thank you, more fire trucks, more police cars, more body cameras. We have 4.4 increase.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, your time's up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Alicia Adams, and I am a resident of Kelly Gambrell's district. Here we are after a year, after we heard that you said we needed to increase our budget for restorative purposes. You also said that the budget would be more than sufficient for managing our county. Where are we now? Last year, Commissioner Cupid voted in favor of the tax increase in order to have more services in her district for her constituents. While some services have been restored, what significant improvements have been made since then? None that we know of. Further, from this new budget increase, what additional services, if any, in this next year will be realized? And how do you expect those constituents who are in rental properties that will be forced to pay that additional rate, how are those people that are close to the poverty level going to be able to pay that as a result of the bloated budget? When Commissioner Joanne Bertle last year voted against a property tax, she stated that the tax increase was, quote, too much. So given that the property tax hike was too much last year, why now would voting for a budget that represents a significant increase over last year's budget to the tune of $20 million additional, why would that be acceptable when it wasn't acceptable last year? Especially given that the tax digest for this year has huge excesses over what was budgeted. Is the rumored process of getting a police precinct 6 worth losing the confidence of your constituents? Especially given that Chief Register repeatedly maintained that a police district 6 wasn't really necessary. Chairman Boyce, you ran against Tim Lee because of his indifference to the needs of the people, especially in regard to building the stadium. Last year, you said that the budget you created with the millage rate increase was more than enough with the estimated tax digest that you allocated. And we've had higher than anticipated tax receipts than budget. You said that the budget was more than sufficient last year. So if it's more than sufficient, why are we here a year later and you're proposing a massive spending increase, $20 million, with a huge increase in spending, but not necessarily a huge increase in improving services, especially in Lisa Cupid's district? With all of the increase in funding to attract and retain police officers, why are we at a -1 deficit in the level of staff for police? Having worked in HR, that I have some solutions if we need them. You committed last year to no further increases. If indeed you have that integrity, as you've stated that you do, honor your word and stop increasing the spending. We're not here to increase government. We're here to be efficient and effective in our budgeting processes.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, your time is up.
If we vote for this budget tonight,
Thank you.
it'll be hoodwinked and bamboozled for us as citizens.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Linda Jean Lucas. I live at 5042 Verbena Drive, Ackworth, off Bells Ferry. And I'm not a bean counter. I mean, when I die and go to hell, I'll have to read things like that. But I have very good instincts. And what my instincts are telling me from listening to all these people and I've been here 5 years. I moved here from Pennsylvania. I also lived in New Jersey and New York. I'm here because it is not New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois. And what you're doing here by having these rampant, out of control budgets, and I mean, I can hear what these people are saying, and I see that it's not efficient. My sense, without being a bean counter, there's no efficiency here. There's just people rambling off numbers, and if you ask a question, they'll go back and ramble off a bunch of numbers and confuse you even more. But I don't want to live in Pennsylvania. I don't want to live in New York. I've lived all over the world, and this place feels more like home to me. I ride around and I look at Georgia and I say, oh my God, it's so beautiful. I love it here. Please don't drive people like me away. Not all of us that come down here from the north can go to East Cobb and buy an $800,000 house. We're not in that league. We come, we buy what we can afford, and when you keep raising the prices on things, you're forcing us out, and that's not a good thing. I mean, we're here to contribute to the community, and we don't want to be forced out. So please, please, when Linda Jean I told this to Joanne this afternoon, when Linda Jean needs new gutters on her house, she does not go out and buy expensive jewelry. She says, no, you can't have it. And I'm asking you to do the same thing. Be reasonable with our money. If you're in a league way above mine, please consider my league and act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none, I now declare this third public hearing on the fiscal year 2020 proposed budget closed. Let me go and make the motion, and then we'll have discussion, okay? With that, I make a motion that the board I make a motion the board adopt the fiscal year 2020 budget and authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents. Do I have a second?
Second in
Okay.
discussion.
Now we'll open the floor to discussion. Commissioner Burrow.
Bill, for the contingency
Yes, ma'am.
items, before they are spent or dispersed, will they not have to come back as an agenda item?
So the only exception to that will be the ones for merit. That is something that budget office maintains and can only be moved to cover merit or salary shortfalls.
Right.
With the exception of that, yes, they have to come back before the board. The only other exception that I have would be the county manager's contingency, because that's within his spending controls or his spending authority. So with that being said, yes, the items do have to come back, and they do have to come back as the designated purpose as presented here. And if there was any change to that, that would also have to come back before the board. So anytime these funds will be used for what, obviously the purpose identified here, but if there was any savings or anything like that, that would still have to come back before the board to be utilized for any purpose as we move forward.
Right, and I'm referring to even the storm debris
Yes.
disaster fund
So-
or Keep Cobb Beautiful or internal audit when we
Yes.
hire or contract for those services or positions, they'll have to come back to the board for.
Yes, and it's my understanding that they're going to present a plan specifically for internal audit and keep Cobb beautiful and present that to the board, so you'll know exactly how those dollars are going to be spent. Now, whether that is additional staff or contracting out, I think that'll be part of that
Right.
presentation.
Okay. I just want to be clear on that.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Commissioner Ott?
Yeah, mine's not a question. Thanks, Bill.
Thank
Mr. Chairman, I have looked at this budget proposal and I have major concerns for the county moving forward. Not only is this budget not addressing them, but it will place major strains on future budgets that will require this board and future boards to continue to accept the tax digest increases, but to also to increase the millage rate or cut services. The three major issues facing this county are public safety, DOT, and the employee pension. A great deal of time and resources has been spent discussing critical manning and retention for public safety. At past meetings, the board has heard from the FOP, police, and fire that Cobb has a retention problem and that many officers are leaving to go work for other cities. The main recurring theme I have heard is that at 5 years, Cobb loses seasoned officers because there is no incentive to stay. The step-in grade addresses this area. I believe that our current public safety people need to have a decent wage, and by implementing the step-in grade, this could have happened. My concern is that there won't be enough money in the next budget that will allow for this implementation without a digest increase to police and sheriff, and both a digest increase and a millage increase for fire. Another major issue, which has not been addressed in this budget, is DOT. Officially, this board is called the Commissioners of Roads and Bridges, per the enabling legislation that created it. Almost 95%, and I'll repeat that, 95% of DOT's budget is funded by the special purpose local option sales tax. Your roads, your bridges, your sidewalks are all in SPLOST. The county has over 2,400 miles of roads which require regular scheduled paving. The accepted cycle to maintain our roads is on a 20-year rotation on major streets and a 25-year rotation on minor streets. Our local streets currently have a rating of 49 out of 100, and our major streets a rating at 63. Just to maintain this number, it would cost the county approximately $26 million a year. Think of that and think of the condition of your streets in your subdivision. What is troubling, besides the fact that road paving is clearly not a special purpose, but that is currently being funded out of the 2016 SPLOST at $15 million a year. There is no line item in this budget that is addressing DOT, streets and sidewalks that show a move to pulling this back to the general fund budget where it needs to be. The most devastating blow to this county is if the SPLOST does not pass. DOT could not operate and your roads will not be repaved or maintained. An additional DOT issue is Cobb Link. When I was first elected, the general fund subsidy for transit was $9 million. This year, the subsidy is almost $20 million for a $25 million operation. At an earlier work session, there was some discussion about why the subsidy is even discussed. A subsidy that is almost the equivalent of 1 mil needs to be discussed. Cobb has taken on too many grants, and those that are expiring are now forcing the county to pick up the tab. I will continue to work with DOT as a liaison commissioner on the new service plan that provides the services the citizens need, but works to eliminate the excessive costs. The final issue I see before the county is the employee pension. No one on this board created the problem facing the county. The problem was when a previous board put in place the Rule of 80. More importantly, and probably the single reason the pension is so underfunded, is the fact that when the Rule of 80 was put in place, it was made retroactive. The rate that the retirees received was more than they had paid. That alone took the pension from being funded at 95% in 1997 to 52% today. A few years back, the board adjusted the pension to a hybrid plan, but that never addressed the underlying issues. The county is now a few years into a 30-year catch-up. Looking at the proposed budget before me tonight, I am deeply concerned that nothing is being done to address these issues. Yes, there is an increase in the transit subsidy, but this is simply throwing more money at a broken system. The county has a $21 million increase in the digest. This may not be the same for next year or the year after. This $21 million should not be spent on recurring cost items. If this money should go away, it would result in another millage increase to maintain those recurring costs. There is also the issue of the water system transfer. I have been advocating to reduce this long before any current members of the board were elected. I have previously stated my belief that it represents a hidden tax, especially when the millage was lowered and the water rate was increased. With all of that, I believe that the issues mentioned above are more pressing than continuing to lower the transfer. This budget has almost $2.5 million of water system transfer monies that should go towards one of the issues mentioned above. Although it would not be enough to fully address the issue, it would be a clear sign to the citizens that this board is serious about addressing these issues. I agree that there are capital needs that have not been previously addressed, but there are also many items in this budget that simply shouldn't be there. There is $1 million for the undesignated contingency. We already talked about the removal of the MWR, but more importantly is my concern, there's $250,000 in there for a lobbyist. And I could go on with more. Use of general fund contingency fund is the issue I had last year when the budget was proposed. I expressed my concerns about the funding for the 23 new officers in the fund and not in the public safety account. My concern was due to the normal 20 to 30 officer openings. That money could be used for something else and not to fund those positions. Those unfilled positions were used to fund the supplemental pay given to the sworn officers. Now, it was important to give them that money, but no one was told that that's where it came from. This year, there are undesignated funds in the budget totaling $33 million. I fail to understand why this is acceptable to this board. Each dollar spent by this county should have a designated line item and be in the appropriate account. That is an open and transparent government. That is what residents in District 2 expect. They want to see line by line how their money is being spent. So moving forward, I see some ways this board can work to address these issues. In public safety, it is imperative that a step and grave plan be put in place. I want to see that this plan is being worked on starting tomorrow, after this budget has been voted on. I do not want to hear that it has not been fully vetted and not enough time has been given to it this next year. I have a plan that was given to me by the police and fire, and the county manager and Bill Volkman have seen the plan. It is my hope that it is affordable next year. Secondly, DOT issues must be addressed. This board cannot continue to ignore the peril facing the county with the over-reliance on SPLOST. General fund monies must start now to be allocated to repaving and general DOT operations. Opening the libraries an extra day is of no value to the citizens if they can't get to them because of deteriorating streets. Finally, the pension shortfall needs to be aggressively addressed. I had a citizen at the last budget meeting suggest, which I think was a great idea, that when the park bond matures and is paid off in 2021, that the county, when adjusting the millage down on the debt service, that 0.12 mils be added to the general fund and dedicated to the pension. That would result in an additional $4 to $5 million going into the pension fund. Regardless of the outcome of the budget vote, I am asking staff that any future agenda items that come before this board using contingency funds must state in the funding section what the monies were originally earmarked to fund. That ensures that both the commissioners and the public know what is being unfunded because of the agenda item. Mr. Chairman, I cannot support the proposed budget as presented. I have offered to you plans given to me by the police and fire regarding step and grade that could have been implemented in this budget. I have spoken at previous meetings my concerns about items in this budget that should not be funded, and I have made it known about my belief that contingency funds should not be used. I cannot in good conscience vote for this budget.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow.
Thank you. Actually, before I read what I had, my prepared remarks, I'd like to clarify a few comments that were received tonight. Last year, I could not support the full 1.7 millage increase. And I said up front to the chairman and publicly, because there were no cuts. And nothing was addressed as far as any reductions or cuts. And this year, there are some cuts, and the water transfer is back on track. In 2012, I initiated a program to reduce the water transfer by 1% incrementally each year. And I know Commissioner Ott supported doing away with the water transfer and voted against budgets before I got here because of the water transfer. But in 2012, I got with the water system director and the then county manager and came up with a plan to put something in place, which we did. And for 5 years, it was reduced down 4 years to 6%. And then in 2016, when the millage was rolled back, which a lot of you have been asking for tonight, that went back up to 10%, and it's been there ever since. So this year, because I've been pushing for this again to start back, we are now reducing it again incrementally each year. So, and as far as a police precinct in my district, I've seen the posts on Facebook, and I know where they're coming from, and they are rumors. That is a Tier 1 2016 splost item, and I'm sure you're aware of it because you know the splost. And it was voted on in 2014 by the citizens of Cobb, and it is a Tier 1 project. It has to be done. So there's no promise of any promises that I'm getting anything. It's already on the books, and there will be a precinct 6 someday. I'd first like to say thank you to the chairman, county manager, deputy county manager, Bill Volkman, Buddy Taysar, and finance, and all the departments for working together on the budget these last several months. As vice chair this year, I've had a lot of input over the last several months with the chairman and staff and county manager, and I appreciate the opportunity and the honor to work with you and provide that input. I think overall this is a good budget. However, it's not perfect. It does address and helps resolve the crisis and is a good start for our public safety and sheriff. We have all said that public safety is our #1 priority, and it's high time that we're doing something about it. These officers, firefighters, and deputies and their families make sacrifices every day to protect and serve the public, and I'm committed to doing whatever it takes to retain and recruit for them. If this budget receives approval tonight, here's what we can expect. One-time retention bonus that goes into effect the first pay period in August for public safety, sworn and certified officers and deputies, and then the 7% increase in salaries for them that would go into effect the first pay period in October. All the other employees would receive a 4% raise if they have a meets or exceeds on their performance appraisal. Our employees have not had any merit increases or cost of living adjustments in the past several years. For the employees who receive a merit-based increase, that pay will show up in their paycheck for the first pay period in October. The employees are the face of Cobb and serve and respond to citizen calls and needs day in and day out. We've received some letter requests to roll back the millage. State law requires that if there's no rollback to match the tax digest increase, then we must advertise as an increase and have 3 public hearings, which we have done as of tonight. And here's a little history for you. In 2016, the other commissioners who sat with me on this board agreed that we should roll back the millage. It was a unanimous vote of 5-0. Those who were here then said that we wish we hadn't. In 2017, a millage increase was proposed, but instead we used one-time monies for items that needed to be sustained from year to year. Because of the rollback and the one-time monies used for ongoing items, we had a $30 million deficit last year. To resolve the deficit, there was a 1.7 million millage increase proposed for last year's budget. Again, I could not support 1.7 mills without any cuts being made. Today's budget shows that the cuts that we are making includes the water transfer fee, which goes from 10% to 9%, $2.2 million. Also, this budget addresses the crisis that we are facing in public safety. This 7% increase will happen almost immediately. Our public safety leadership team supports the 7% increase. And I have letters that I'd like to enter here for the record, one from the sheriff supporting that and one from the public safety team, police chief, fire chief, and director. They know what is needed and their recommendations go a long way. Public safety has requested the time and opportunity to fully vet the step-and grade plan. They want to provide recommendations and input to ensure we get this right. They would like to wait before this moves forward. And even if it was implemented tonight, it wouldn't go into effect until next year. And we really don't have time to wait that long. So I think we need to take action now and approve the 7% and the other incentives and benefits. And I do agree that step-and grade is the right direction to go. And we already have the support of public safety and I'm assuming the board, I know I do and Commissioner Wright does, of moving forward with that for next year. Also, we need to evaluate the impact and what it's gonna take to do that. But it is the way to go, and I do support that. I support this budget because it shows that we're making cuts, we're reducing the water transfer fee, supporting our employees, but most of all, taking care of public safety first and foremost, which I'm fully committed to. Thank you.
Hey, Commissioner. Mr. Gamble.
Okay, where to begin? Where to begin? I think, Commissioner Burrell, you brought up the $30 million deficit. We all remember the $30 million deficit. We all remember that the millage rate was set last year to cover that. However, that has been repaid. So looking at this year, that automatically puts $30 million more in our budget for us to spend. If you also recall, in February, we spent off $14 million in fund balance on capital one-time expenditures. And then we also gave $8 million to the medical examiners. That comes up to about $52 million. I know one of our speakers said we had $72 million in excess fund. So if we truly have that money, where is it? And why isn't it being reflected and taken off of the backs of the taxpayers this year? As far as the step and pay, I do support our public safety officers, and I do believe the merit raise and the raise for our employees can be given without a millage increase, or keeping the millage the same as it is and increasing our budget based on the comments I just gave. A lot of discussion is being asked for this board to commit to a step and pay grade next year. However, I hope this board is willing to commit to a 1 mil increase to cover that for our public safety officers, and then also about a 0.38 mil increase on our fire fund to cover the step and pay that's being proposed. The water transfer was also mentioned, but also for history, back in September of 2018, this board approved a water rate increase to essentially allow for a 10% 10% transfer from the water department into our general budget. If we are looking at reducing that transfer, then we also need to look at reducing the rates that we put onto your water bill, because again, this is a tax as well. There are many things in the general fund contingency. This goes back to our discussion, which many of you were not aware of on Monday, when we have a budget item coming forward in our consent to put the Veterans Day as a paid holiday for our employees. One of the commissioners asked a question if we had funding for that holiday. It was discussed that we didn't need to fund that holiday because it was already funded in the salaries. So then my question is on the contingency, which is up on the screen right now, using that basis, why do we have to fund for contingency sick pay buyback and then also holiday pay for part-time positions? If it's already funded in the general budget, we shouldn't have to put it in contingency. I already mentioned the internal audit. While I know there was mentioned last week that we needed to increase staffing there, by putting the $187.5 thousand to that, we are essentially increasing that one department's budget by 45.7%. Looking at the budget detail, the Board of Commissioners and also the county manager have a contingency of $1 million and then $30,000. Yet within the budget for the past 3 years, I do not ever see that contingency being transferred into the department nor spent. So my question is do we really need to have that contingency allocated, or how is it being used? Again, more details. Debt service, we're showing that there was $400,000 in the general fund administrative for the TANs, yet in the detail, we're seeing $823,000 put out. Again, maybe the part of that is for the fire funds. It's still not clear. The parking deck, we show that there's $116,520 subsidy being transferred in. Yet if you look at the detail, it shows a transfer in of $186,240 and also a contingency of $111,116. This is a lot of money going to a subsidy. Which is it? E911, because I know this is going to be more than likely coming back for asking for this incentive pay, since we now have the DA and the solicitor's office asking for it. The 911 had a fund balance transfer of $1,580,099, along with the streetlight district of $141,675. But again, if we look in the budget as it's presented, we don't see where we know what amount the fund balance we have available to the public. It's not detailed out, Bill, in the line items. I'm glad to hear we are going to be changing the general fund contingency for the debt service for the stadium, because it is misleading to put the $22 million in the contingency, knowing that about $17 million of that 22 is funded by other revenue sources, leaving the actual amount that the taxpayer is responsible for at just over $5 million. And just for comparison purposes, this overspending in contingency more than covers the pay increases needed for the public safety and our employees. We also have to remember we gave that $8 million loan to the medical examiners in order for them to purchase or to start building their 2016 SPLOS project that we had only allocated $3 million for, and is actually costing them $11 million. The board loaned money to them out of the general fund of $8 million. That's $8 million that we won't be loaning to them this year that is currently available for a reduction. Cobb Travel and Tourism. They are a nonprofit. If we are not going to be funding nonprofits, we do not need to be funding Cobb Travel and Tourism. With that being said, I understand from ACCG that we are required by law to fund Cobb Travel and Tourism at 2% of the hotel motel tax, which is $3.6 million, which would be we would be required to pay them $72,000. However, currently we have $1.512 million allocated to Cobb Travel and Tourism, which is a nonprofit. And then I already mentioned the library. So with those discrepancies, and again, I think we do have revenue sitting there that we're not realizing, I cannot support the budget.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cupid.
I'm in support of the budget that's presented this evening and recognize that the budget is never a perfect document where everyone gets what's desired, but it is our greatest policy document to address the needs of this county and to ensure that it runs every year. And I'm impressed and humbled by the amount of work that all of the commissioners take in going through this. This is not an easy process for any one of us. And even with those painstaking measures and being a steward of the county tax dollars, the reality is as commissioners, we come and go. And because of that limited nature of our position being up here, I think, at least for me, I recognize that the county functions beyond just the members of this board. We function in partnership with those who commit themselves to public service as employees. And in moving forward a budget, it's not just even committing to those employees, but it's committing to the public that we will continue to provide services that many of them expect to not have to be concerned about every day. They expect their roads to be paved, as Commissioner Ott provided. They expect their water rates to be reasonable, as was discussed by Commissioner Burrow, excuse me, I'm sorry, Commissioner. And with all of the observations made by Commissioner Gambrell, they're expecting efficiency and fairness in how we do things, and ensuring that people are treated and organizations are treated equitably. And I can't say that this is a perfect process because even as was identified by many of our speakers this evening, the way that our budget is presented, it's not always crystal clear how money's moving. And again, it's something after being here 7 years, I continue to learn something new about this process every year. And I've just found every time I review this process every year and I learn more about it, I appreciate the diligence of our finance team and your commitment to operating efficiently and conservatively for the county. And I recall even from the first days of being a commissioner and looking at different things we had to fund, the approach of our finance team is always to be conservative in how they assess how money will be spent. And I think that's allowed Cobb County to stand as a gem amongst the 159 counties. Again, not saying we're perfect, but I know that even from speaking amongst my peers across the county, we get a lot of things right here. And part of this effort of being up here as commissioners and being here just for a snapshot of time, we try to make things better. But I realize I don't make things better coming as an adversary to our staff or to our finance team. We've had 3 hearings and we determine our budget every year. And I recognize, if anyone, I have a lot of grace for Commissioner Gambrell, for her to understand to get to the point where she's gotten to today, just reflects her level of diligence to understand something that's very complex. But over a year, we have opportunity to ask these questions and work together with others to get this right. No commissioner is an island unto themselves. Nobody gets exactly what they want. We have to work together. We have to work together. We do. Last year, I remember advocating for certain things, inclusive of an employee raise. It didn't come last year. But I had to work together with a team to continue to have this county operate year after year. And I'm hoping that our voices can project here, but our voices and our suggestions have got to go through staff. They've got to go through commissioners. Or else what are we doing? None of us are up here as just commissioner so-and-so. We are a board, and we are Cobb County government. We are a team. And I'm hoping that as we operate, we continue to, with our diligence and concern about the budget, that we realize we're all in this together to make Cobb County run as effectively and efficiently as possible. I'm going to go through some things that I heard today because I want to address some specific matters which have come up today. For the nonprofit funding, I'm in support from a fiscal perspective of addressing a population which could become a burden to how the county functions. But I'm also concerned about being equitable about those funds. And I've shared in the past that I have had concern about the distribution of those funds not necessarily going to areas of the county that have suffered the greatest level of need and engaging the partners on the ground there. I've seen different organizations continue to benefit and to grow from it, who serve with their hearts to address vulnerable populations. But I look and I see other nonprofit leaders who've been here on the ground who have care about vulnerable populations, and those vulnerable populations are in their community, and they can't tap those resources. They never get opportunity to serve not only a vulnerable community, but their community the way that we have spent those dollars. And I have been a partner to want to support this, but I have not seen a real diligent effort to ensure that all the nonprofit community can benefit from these dollars. So I'm hoping that this is something that we can revisit, and when we revisit it, that we see those dollars spent equitably across the vulnerable areas across the county. I thought it was very astute for someone to observe that we spend $1.4 million in golf, but we can't spend 0.86 in providing for our vulnerable populations. Not only is that disparity in monetary value, but maybe it shows a disparity in values. What do we value? What are our tax dollars worth going? And I hear that government should not be supporting nonprofits, but should governments be then supporting businesses? We recognize that there's 3 categories of organizations. There's nonprofit, there's nonprofit public, or nonprofit public and private. So why are we so reticent to see our partnership with the nonprofit community, but we are more agile in supporting and providing dollars for private interests, much more significantly than 0.86 million. So I think that's something that we have got to assess as a board. There was a comment provided about the disparities in pay for public safety. And I believe we have dug a hole. The commissioners, we have dug a hole for our population of public safety employees when we have not provided for merit increases for all of our employees. I mean, for us to have provided merit increases for 3 out of, somebody said 11 years, I've only been here for 7. There's no way to maintain the morale of an organization. And how can you do it? Public safety puts their life on the line. How can you do it for morale of an organization? Recognizing, again, employees are not an island to themselves. They are service providers. They directly impact levels of service. So I see employee raises. Yes, I like the employees and I support them. But I also am committed to and bound to provide a certain level of service that my constituents put me here to provide. And that is directly tied to maintaining a strong employee base. It's directly tied to it. They are not separate. And I don't understand this bifurcation of don't support the employees, but yet my calls never diminish from the same population that needs support for us to provide a certain level of service. If you expect service, you've got to expect the base to provide it. You have to. There was a comment made about how did the budget last year impact District 4, and we saw no benefit. And I wholeheartedly disagree that District 4 saw no benefit to last year's budget. Last year, we provided money to increase staff at the Mabel House. Just I think 1.5 employees. The Mabel House, for the first time in how many years, is operating in the green. Far beyond the amount of staff that was provided. And the numbers keep rising. That shows me again, there is a relationship between providing for our staff and the level of service and even return, financial return that the county can get. To provide transit service, that's a big deal for District 4, but it's a big deal for the whole county. It's year 2020, and we're talking about autonomous vehicles, we're talking about the ATL and all this initiatives. And we don't provide Sunday service. Like, we are so far behind the 8 ball when it comes to transit. When we provide transit service on Sunday, we let people go to work on Sunday. That provides a better return for us. And there's lots of other services. People take advantage. Commerce, the economy does not stop 6 days for that 7th day and only operates 6 days of the week. Mobility means something when it comes to the vitality of a community. That's another benefit of last year's budget. Body cameras. We've infused having body cameras available for our police to not only keep them safer, but to keep our public safer. Don't tell me that's not a benefit, not only to District 4, but to the whole county. Last year, we provided for us to go from contractual services to DOT to bring that in-house. I cannot count the decrease in calls I get for right-of-way service. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but I spend a lot less time with constituents calling me because the brass is so tall that they can't walk on a sidewalk. And I've gotten emails and compliments from people pleased to see Cobb County be much more responsive than they've been in times past when it comes to right-of-way maintenance. That would not have been facilitated without last year's increase. That's a benefit. Because of what we did last year, we borrowed less money in our TANs, which is our tax anticipation notes. And for a conservative county, don't you want to borrow less? We borrowed less money because of the decision we made last year. Don't tell me there's not a benefit. Now, I'm not saying, again, everything is perfect. It's not. We have a long ways to go, as was stated. And the chairman's effort in keeping the millage rate flat is to get us to where we can eventually go, but to get there, you've got to put some money towards it. And, I agree with Commissioner Burrow. The board did vote 5-0 in 2016, including me, to make a very draconian cut in the millage. And that burden was placed on our current chairman to have to get us out of that $30 million hole. And I know, for me, I was encouraged to cut the millage rate because I was told we would address that in the budget come a month and a half later. And come a month and a half later, it was like I was talking to crickets. It was like all of a sudden that promise made to bring the budget back was no longer a promise. So I didn't do that for any political expediency. I didn't do it because I thought 6.66 was appropriate, but because we do retroactive budgeting in the county, I thought the 6.66 was to address the past budget, and And the budget we were gonna set a month and a half later was gonna set us up for success. But when it came time for us to put the money where we said we were, I mean, literally, literally there were crickets. So I feel for the chairman for having to take the brunt of getting us out of that hole. And he only did it with 3 out of 5. Even if Commissioner Burrow says we all thought those cuts were draconian, those cuts were steep. They didn't join him when it was time to recover. We do a lot to leverage resources in this county. There's concern about having a federal lobbyist. Cobb County misses out on our fair share of tax dollars. There was a discussion about getting money for the census so we can leverage federal tax dollars. When we have no one talking to our counterparts in DC, we lose money that other municipalities and localities are taking advantage of. They get grant opportunities that pass Cobb County by. So again, I just think we have the ability to leverage those dollars to get more dollars to take the burden off of you. Help us invest so we can leverage our money here. We're trying to do our best. All of this is not necessarily clear in the way that we do things. Very quickly, I offered for there to be a Budget 101 class. I really think that should be offered periodically throughout the year. Because even when I sat through that just the other day, I'm still looking through my mental Rolodex and trying to understand how we do things even more. And I think the more that we educate people so they know that we are all a team, we don't do this separate from you, we don't do this apart from you, we want to do this with you and for you. The more you understand that, trust me, the easier it is for all of us to function well for all of Cobb County. So I just want to say thank you to those who have worked diligently. What we don't provide when we provide the budget, we don't provide all the requests that go unmet that the county puts forward, and county managers put forward. We don't ever address that. There are suggestions being brought here today because we spend money out of SPLOST. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. We fund DOT over 90% out of SPLOST. I don't know even what the dollar amount of that is. Do you have any inkling how much we spend for DOT through SPLOST, Bill?
I do know it fluctuates year to year, so it's a significant dollars.
What's
dollar
that?
amount.
What's significant?
I mean, Commissioner, I know you
What's
and I
the
talked about it
ballpark?
today. Do you have, let's see. No. We're all getting no's right now as the exact dollar amount.
What is the equivalent millage to put that in the general fund?
I mean, just as Commissioner Ott talked about today, just the resurfacing alone, we're looking at what, $23 to $26 million a year,
Which is how many?
which
mil?
is almost a mil. I mean,
Almost a
1 mil
mil.
is about 30 million.
So imagine DOT does a lot more than that.
Absolutely.
And if we cannot even float, I don't know what the dollar equivalent to this keeping it flat as or what the rollback millage would have been. But imagine if we would follow Commissioner Ott's request to move DOT from the SPLOST to the general fund. You are looking at an additional 2-3 mils just for DOT. Nobody's trying to do anything funny here. People are trying to lessen the burden as much as possible. But to take advantage of the ideas that are brought forward and are sometimes even criticized, it still takes money. It just does. And I assure you that we have a lot of people who are here trying to do the best that they can effectively and efficiently as possible. And I can't help but support it. Again, even knowing there's some things that I've requested that aren't in here, there are a lot of things staff has requested that is not in here. I think a great job has been done within the limitations brought forward in keeping this millage flat to serve Cobb County to the best of its ability. And with that, Chairman, I will support you in your budget proposal today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just two brief comments before I call the vote here. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Adams for giving out my personal phone number to all those people who call me. And I called every one of them back, and it's amazing how much of an education they got when I talked to them. Because they weren't aware of the fact that we weren't raising the millage rate. The increase in the tax digest comes largely from the business community. Why is that? Because we didn't raise your millage rate. If you're in a home, the floating and home exemption protects you from increased revenue taxes. So if you bought a new house this year, or you added on to your house, you might have got, if you, in those instances, we would have received more revenue from you for your home. But if you live in the same house this year as you did last year, you will not pay $1 extra in the general fund part of your taxes. So the fire fund and the parks bond, both those items were approved by the taxpayer. Those are taxed against the appraised value of your home. Why is this important? Because if you bought a house 40 years ago and you bought it $100,000 and it's appraised at $40,000 and minus $10,000 exemption, you are paying today taxes on a $30,000 house, even though you know your house is appraised significantly in 40 years. That's the beauty of Cobb County. And how much did we lose in revenue this year, the county? $41 million. That's how much you kept in your wallet. Why is that a big deal? Because last year you kept $23 million, and this year you're keeping another $18 million. So this is nirvana in Georgia. Now, I can't talk about the rest of the part of your tax bill. I just want to talk about the county part. So just take a look at your tax bill and make sure that if you're talking about increased tax revenue, we know what we're talking about here. The second thing is, there are a lot of things that happened before some of us got on the board. I don't worry about that stuff. I mean, I was told a long time ago, when you get on the board, throw the previous people under the bus and use it as an excuse why something happened. I don't believe in doing that. I own this. I own today. All right? I have to only be responsible for what I'm trying to do with this board. And I agree with Commissioner Cupid. It's the we part. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll say this about this board. They are honest to a fault. How much is that worth to you? That you have a board that believes in integrity and honesty with capital letters. So we don't all agree here. But that means that we all have to bring our best game every time we want to go and advocate something here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that what we have tonight here is what I call a middle-of-the-road budget. It's called a compromise. It's what our founding fathers believed. That's how you move things forward. And next year, we're going to find out what happens, because a lot of the arguments for a rollback, they may be in place. But I also heard what Commissioner Gamble said tonight about the step and grade. The reason we didn't bring the step and grade is because, as Steve Gaynor from the POAB said, it's not ready for prime time. We do not have the hard facts right now. And we're not going to bring something here that doesn't have hard factual data that we can play against the millage rate. So we'll see what happens next year. No commitments. It's about the money. But I understand, I hear you that you want to, as we get more tax digest, we may want to roll the millage rate back. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want a 3-star county, we'll give you a 3-star budget. And just tell me, what do you want me to close? I'm going to be very blunt about this. This budget keeps everything open. And more importantly, and if you're a senior, we're doing away with your senior fees, okay? So this budget does a lot of things in response to what we heard at the town halls over the last year. And I really appreciate the support of Commissioner Burrell and Commissioner Cupid on this budget here. I also appreciate what Commissioner Ott and Commissioner Gamble did, because I was trying to find a way to get their vote. I wasn't successful this year, but I wasn't successful last year, with Commissioner Burrell for different reasons. And like she said, 1 year is a long time. A lot of things happened between last year and this year. And this year, it was all about increased compensation for our public safety. And this budget delivers that. We have lived up to our commitment to our public safety. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. And I think that everyone that's in this county that believes that public safety is on priority, this year's budget, in conjunction with last year's budget, clearly reflects that. So with that, I call the question. It passes 3-2 with Commissioner Gamble and not in opposition. Let's take a 10-minute break, all right? Thank you. Live.
We'll take it in 3, 2.
Okay, welcome back, and we have one more public hearing. I'm just having deja vu here because I'm almost sure that this person up at the podium, that she looks like someone used to work here, but, you know, could you please identify yourself?
My name is Debbie Blair.
That's what I thought. It's good to see you again, Debbie.
Nice to see y'all.
We're gonna have a public hearing we're gonna conduct the first public hearing to solicit comments and input on proposed amendment to the official code of Cobb County, Part 1, Chapter 134, on zoning, Article 6. So with that, before I open up the hearing, it's all yours.
And good evening. I am Debbie Blair for the record, and I'm here to present the proposed revisions to the sign code. I'm here because I worked very closely with staff when I was with the county on this. As the chairman indicated, these are amendments to the sign code, Article 6 of Chapter 134, and this is the first public hearing. There will be 2 additional public hearings. The first one before the Planning Commission on August 6th, and then the second one before this board again on August 27th. A U.S. Supreme Court case, Reed versus Town of Gilbert, decided in 2015 dramatically changed how local governments can regulate signs. The Reed case involved a small church that challenged the town's sign code because special event signs, which it needed to advertise where its services were going to be held, were treated less favorably than political or ideological signs. The court's decision in that case finds that sign codes with different rules for different categories of signs are content-based, and therefore strict scrutiny by the court applies. This is a very difficult standard if challenged. While the county made some revisions in 2016, it was not enough to eliminate all of the content-based references, and that is why these additional recommendations are being proposed. The Reed case does not mean that signs cannot be regulated. It is still considered a significant government interest to protect property values within its jurisdiction, as well as to protect its citizens when they travel through the county. However, regulations cannot be content-based. The graph on the left of the screen here is the Town of Gilbert's code, which, for example, allowed political signs to be 32 square feet and ideological signs to be different sizes, as well as different sizes for other types of signs. The content determined the allowable size of the sign. After Reed, only non-content aspects of signs may be regulated. Some of these considerations are listed on the right of this slide. These types of restrictions have been incorporated into our proposed revisions. The majority of the changes that you will see in the sign code, or you have read already, are just to describe the signs based on non-content identifiers. The administrative and the enforcement sections of the code are remaining relatively unchanged. But because substantial changes are proposed to the code has also been restructured slightly to allow the process to flow more chronologically and to simplify the code. The current slide lists some descriptions on the left side as far as descriptions which are in our current code. These are problematic under Reed. On the right-hand side, you will see descriptions in the proposed code without reference to content. So we can identify code or signs by size, height, location, number, temporary versus permanent, but we can't call them a parking sign. We can't call them a recreational sign. That's content-based under Reed and not allowed. As a result of Reed, a sign code that makes any distinction based on the message of the sign is content-based, and it's required to be strictly scrutinized by courts. The changes currently proposed are to eliminate those distinctions in the current code. And if there's any questions, I think you want to open the public hearing first at this point in time. If you would open the public hearing, please.
All right, with that, Again, going to open up the floor here to conduct the first public hearing to solicit comments and input on the proposed amendments to the official code of Cobb County, Part 1, Article, Chapter 134, Zone, Article 6. 3 minutes per person, unlimited speakers, and please let us know who you are and where you live. So with that, I now declare this first public hearing open. And Ron, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ron Siphon, and I've got a copy of the the third paragraph of Section 134.311. This is my concern. It appears that this new ordinance is stating that Cobb County is prohibiting itself from having any review or oversight of the content on signs, any kind of signs. This seems extreme and possibly not in the best interests of the citizens of Cobb County. It seems like the way this ordinance is written that it's almost an invitation to display pornography or other extreme sexual content, violence, depictions of violence, content that promotes drug use or terrorism, content that could recruit for ISIS or other similar organizations. To assume that none of these situations will ever occur is unrealistic. Cobb County would almost be inviting organizations to take advantage of that language for those purposes. I would ask Cobb County, this is the first public hearing, you've got some time. I would urge you to have the county's attorney's office go back and see if there's any possible way, even if you have to go to court to get the courts to say, yes, you're on solid ground on this, even if you don't want to address sexual content or content that depicts violence, at an absolute minimum, if you had exceptions to this that said you're not going to allow content and you're not discriminating from one organization to another, like Reed, and you've gotten along for 4 years without doing this code amendment, just explore whether you can exempt for all organizations any content that would promote drug use, that would promote terrorism, or that would recruit for ISIS or other such organizations, or otherwise endanger the public. Because this language is just an invitation for that type of abuse, and I really hope that you'll make some changes to prevent that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Amy?
Hey, I'm Amy Barnes from Marietta. I'm actually in favor of this ordinance and the language that was described. There's this magical thing called the First Amendment, and it is clear, finally, we have a code enforcement amendment I will back 100% because it is 100% in line with the Constitution and Bill of Rights. As for the previous speaker, I've got news for you. This thing called printing presses has existed for quite some time, and you can already find all kinds of offensive things on signs that are handheld and on T-shirts and online. So I think that's a whole moot point, and he needs to research amendment number 1. So I definitely support this code enforcement package. Please vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Further comment? Last call for further comment? Okay, seeing none, I now close this first public hearing, soliciting comments about the proposed amendment to the official code of Cobb County, Part 1, Chapter 134. Okay, the next public hearing. Yeah, absolutely, sure.
No, I was just, I didn't know if there were any questions.
Yeah, we do.
Evidently not.
We do, yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay,
yeah.
okay.
I only have one question. Is roll tide an offensive comment? I'm not sure.
No comment.
I'm just curious. I just,
It is for people on this board.
I just.
It is Duke is for me.
Anyway, Just,
And this is the reason why we can't get into content.
How about beat
base.
Army? How about beat Navy?
That is offensive, yes. Anybody but Notre Dame is really offensive, that's right. Anyway, comments, questions from the board?
I do.
Commissioner
yes.
Cupid, yes.
Yes. Debbie, can you help in addressing some of the questions with respect to certain types of communications and how that could be regulated legally?
Per read, we cannot allow, I mean, we cannot disallow different things on signs. But there is a clause in the code section 134-341 that requires compliance with other laws. So, for example, obscenity is not allowed. Now, again, you would have to go to court because that's not a clear-cut definition for obscenity. It depends on community values and things. So you can control it under other laws. I would assume, and I don't know that this is a specific law, but if there's, if you're recruiting for terrorists or you're inciting violence with your signage, that would be a criminal act, and the police can go after the property, the sign owner at that point in time. So it would be under that, but truly, as Ms. Barnes said, I mean, it is a First Amendment issue, and provided they're not breaking any other laws, people have a right to have signs up in their yards. There are some signs that are allowed on residences, obviously, for businesses and those kinds of things, but we are not allowed to regulate signs based on content.
Okay, other questions? Other questions? Okay, we're good.
Okay.
The next hearing is on August 27th, correct?
For this board, yes,
Correct.
August 6th for the Planning Commission.
Right, okay.
Thank you all.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's go to public comment. Bill, how many do we have?
There are 8 total. I'd imagine as I go through the list, there may be some that signed up that may have been for millage or budget.
Okay, all right.
Number 1 on the list is Amy Barnes.
I'm like those drain flies. I don't ever go away. Okay, regarding, it's so wrong, but so right. I know that we have this fantastic law library. Whoever's in charge of the signage that's in the hallway, in that nice walkway between Superior Court and Magistrate, it'd be nice if they'd include the law library on that sign. The other thing is, with respect to the raises given by the police, I'm very happy to see that put into place. If there's any way we can continue the increase in communication that I'm seeing finally opening up, with respect to what Kelly Gambrill said earlier, very eye-opening remarks about how thoroughly the budget was dissected. I think if we had a more full disclosure on this budget, if we, the public, could see exactly what is going on, why things are lumped into certain line items, hey, you would have a lot more support on this. What we don't see, we can only respond with fear and ignorance. And the idea of the classes, Budget 101, the more information we get, the more good we can encourage our board to go forward with. And with this Budget 101, I would even consider formatting it into a PDF for release so that all citizens can just download it and see what's going on. Make it free and accessible and not a requirement to attend a class, and you'll have more education. You'll have a lot more support, a lot less ignorance, a lot less fear. Communication is essential to the teamwork because you're not an island up there. Each one of y'all on the commissioner board, well, when you guys communicate with us and when we can see what is being done, we can work together enmeshed. on a more efficient framework. And I think that software could be done cheaper, more efficiently. I would even consider looking at an in-house development instead of hiring Open2Gov. I don't know what their prices would be compared to an in-house software developer. Y'all might want to check with Paulding County and Cherokee County because they have an in-house guy who does their money machine in such a way that citizens and staff can see each day how the money flows in and how the money goes out. So if you want transparency, maybe look outside that box. Maybe look outside of what someone is trying to sell you. It's just an idea. But anyway, thank you for passing the budget tonight.
Thank you, Amy. Yes, Commissioner Ott.
Monica she's been maintaining control of a lot of very young visitors tonight.
No, you're good. We're going to try and move Monica up.
Because you know it's past their bedtime and
what
Monica's
number
not
is
ready
she on
to.
the list? Okay, so I'm just going to ask your indulgence. Yeah.
Breon Perkins?
Yeah. All right, now you can come up. All right, come on up here. All right. No, you got to come up here. You can't say no. You got to come up here. There is no no.
Yes.
All right. What are we doing here, Breon?
Oh, I love those shirts.
They are. They're going to perform.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Breon Perkins. I volunteered this summer at Kingsley Village Thrive Camp on Riverside Parkway, along with my mother, Monica Delancey. We serve 100 lunches daily, provided by Must Ministries and Impact Church volunteers. There were 25 campers who took part in the daily activities math, science, civic engagement, and arts and crafts. The campers are wearing their tie-dye shirts they did during arts and crafts. Tonight, Kiera, Kendall, Knowledge, Amy, Ariana, Alani, Jason, Jaden, Pamela, and Malcolm would like to share a song with you they learned at camp. Okay. Okay.
Make new friends. Make new friends. But keep the O. One is silver. One is silver. And the others go. A circle is round. A circle is round. It has no end. It has no end. That's how long. We will be friends. We will be friends. Make new friends. Make new friends. But keep the O. One is silver. One is silver. And the others go. A circle is round. A circle is round. It has no ends. It has no ends. That's how long. We will be friends. We will be friends. Make new friends. Make new friends. But keep the O. One is silver. One is silver. And the others go. A circle is round. A circle is round. It has no ends. It has no ends. That's how long we will be your friends. No, don't go. Don't go.
Thank you. And thank you for letting us go. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Monica. You're the best, Monica. You really are. Thank you. So the question now is, who gets to follow that act?
Mr. Birkenbond.
Mr. Birkenbond. Yeah, come on up, David.
I sure hope you're not going to sing, David.
Oh, that is tough. Me and you's gonna be friends, aren't we? Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners, County Manager David Birkenbine, Outdoor Burning. Can't say enough. If you agree with that one, agree with it. Code shall be controlling, you gotta agree with it. Tells you what outdoor burning is. Just that 54-113, that's just the culprit of the whole thing. But when we get into burning prohibitions, it's, it kind of baffles me on why we have prohibitions, why we have restrictions, why we have exceptions to the restrictions, why we even have any law at all if we got 54-113. Why do we have all this other stuff? It's just a question I've been asking forever. No burning allowed on windy days, 10 miles per hour sustained and all this stuff. Like I said, you can see smoke. And thanks to the constituent for Commissioner Gambrell. Somebody called. What did they call? They saw smoke. They took action. And we got action. That's a plus for me. Somebody may be watching TV that says, well, there ain't nothing I can do about smoke. Yeah, you can. Call. There's proven fact right there. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I can live with that. That's a win. But when you get down here, what the fire chief can do, he's authorized to require the extinguishment of any fire if it adversely interferes with the enjoyment of life and use of property. So, are we getting into property rights? Are we getting into this rights? Are we getting into that? Well, we should have thought about that when we wrote the law. Here it's telling you, if it affects me, put it out. But if I say it affects me, somebody else knows better than me. And that ain't right. You're infringing on my rights when you're saying that it's not affecting me. When you get down, fire chief be authorized to ban outdoor burning, live in geographical area upon receipt of medical burn documentation. Signed by a doctor. They're smarter than a doctor. And on this one here, I talked about the collective will, the dictate of the collective will. There's proof right there. Now, this request, valid for 1 year, requires to be resubmitted annually. The medical burn ban applies only to burning of yard debris. This does not apply to burning of clean wood in chimneys, fire bowls, such and such wretched. 54-113. You just totally wiped out people that need this. Totally wiped them out. Just because I griped back in 2015. That's my problem right there. That was your answer to my problem. Do you like that answer, Mr. Chairman? I mean, that shows the mentality right there. That shows it. There's the documentation. It's approved by the fire marshal. It's signed off. They could have rejected it down there at the bottom, but they didn't. They approved it. And yet, they want to take and tell me that this smoke is not affecting me. I know better than you. Well, it's blowing the other way. Well, it's this. Well, it's that. Well, it's 1,000 foot. It says 1,000 foot. It doesn't say 50 foot. It doesn't say 100 foot. It says 1,000 foot. And 54-113 can be 50 foot from you, and smoke is smoke, and it's going to affect you. It's going to hurt you, especially if they're critical ill. And even if they're not critical ill, the people that don't want to smell smoke, the people that don't want to be smoked out by this 54-113, then they have no recourse. Why? Because when they come out and you call 911, they're not going to put it out. You're going to have to live with it. Well, I don't have to live with tall grass next to me if I call. Like I said last time, I don't have to live to junk cars next to me when I call. So why do I have to call if I'm in a medical burn ban and you tell me that I got to live with it? It ain't right, it ain't fair, and it shouldn't be like this. Now, we need to make some changes somewhere. I'd love to be part of it. After 5 years, I'd love to be part of it. But apparently it ain't gonna happen because there's no communications anymore. Like I said, it broke down last year. Thank you.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Brickenbein. Commissioner Gambrill has something for you.
Yeah, David, as I shared with you earlier, Cornelius, if you can put that picture up. Just yesterday, I'm not sure if it originated with the call to our fire department or to code enforcement, but the events, there was a tree company taking down a tree and using a chipper and then burning the wood chips. The call was placed, the fire department was sent out, they did extinguish the fire, and our code enforcement officer also arrived on scene and issued citations and violations to the individual. So it can work, but we need our constituents and our community to help us to enforce it, and in this instance, it worked.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Commissioner.
Tanya Brinkby. Matt Stegall.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Stegall, and I live in Ackworth, Georgia. I want to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to say a quick word about transit. This is my first experience speaking before the Board of Commissioners, and I commend all of you for being willing to listen anytime I do speak to you to bring up issues. I'm the son of Charlie and Cindy Stegall. We moved here to Cobb County when I was just 5 years old because my dad had a job opportunity. I grew up going to the great schools here. I went to Ford Elementary, Lost Mountain Middle, Harrison High School. And then I went to Georgia Tech, and I moved back here to work. I now have a 2-year-old son, Andy, who was born in Keystone Hospital, and God willing, I hope to raise him here in Cobb County. I'm here today on behalf of Cobb for Transit. We are a diverse group of Cobb citizens who have come together to give a voice to those who need more transit in this county. We just started, but the response so far has been overwhelmingly positive. And when we look at the facts, it becomes abundantly clear that our county needs to invest more to give its citizens greater opportunity through increased transit mobility. I want to state a few facts for the record. Our transit system, Cobb Link, currently has almost 3 million riders per year, which removes 1.5 million cars off the road. This is mostly on routes that serve only the 41 and Highway 75 corridor, with limited transit connectivity to the rest of the region. 70% of these Cobb Link riders take the transit system to and from work. We are a commuting county, so stats that have been shown in previous town halls show that 63% of Cobb workers commute here from another county, and 60% of Cobb residents work in another county. Most of these workers go to the southeast, whether that's to Atlanta, Midtown, Buckhead, Cumberland, all those areas. And this all leads to one problem: traffic. In a recent survey commissioned by the county, traffic was overwhelmingly stated by voters as the top issue facing the county today. 32% of respondents said traffic. Comparatively, education and taxes were next, and they were both right around 10%. So regarding taxes, it's worth mentioning that Cobb has among the lowest millage rates in the region and is one of only 4 counties with as low as a 6% sales tax. So all of this, traffic is the biggest issue, and we're constantly underfunding those resources. And I believe that for far too long, we have done that. So I think that there's opportunity to really help the lower income families in this county and provide them with a world-class transit system to improve their job opportunities. And I want to talk about opportunity for a minute, because the reason why I'm so passionate and will fight so hard to bring more transit here is because transit equals more opportunity. It's the opportunity for a mother and a father to have access to more jobs. It's an opportunity for local businesses to get more customers, and it's also an opportunity for students to get to class, and also the elderly to get to their doctor's appointment. It's an opportunity for each of us to choose not to be stuck in traffic and lessen our impact on the environment. Recently, the Board of Commissioners, y'all had the opportunity to submit projects to the ATL Board for review in their upcoming regional transit plan. And I understand that the timing of this was not ideal with budget and other discussions going on. And I also understand that the county is currently undergoing the comprehensive transit plan process, so we're a bit unsure of what our future plans hold. Still, I am disappointed in the lack of regional projects that have been submitted for inclusion in the regional transit plan. Don't get me wrong, the inclusion of the bus rapid transit routes on the top end of 285 and along I-20 is a great improvement from where we were a couple of weeks ago, and I thank you for that improvement. But we believe it would be a disservice to our citizens to not include more regional projects in this submission, including Connect Cobb. As a reminder, transit projects need to be included in this RTP to be considered for federal and state funds, and the county is not committed financially to any of these projects. In addition, there's also an added benefit in seeing how each of these projects are evaluated and scored compared to other projects in the region. I'm disheartened that when our leaders have an opportunity to provide our citizens with more transit mobility in this region, they continue the same errors of the past by looking at Cobb only instead of connecting our citizens to the rest of the region. Can you imagine the opportunity for a job seeker who has greater access to jobs all around the region, or the business owner in Cumberland or Marietta who now has more customers, or the Fortune 500 executive who might now consider Cobb County for their headquarters because of its access to transit? For me, I imagine opportunity where I don't have to drive from Ackworth to the medical center station just to ride MARTA into town. We ask that our leaders in Cobb stop holding this county back when it comes to regional transit. We ask that you help our beautiful county move forward by providing our citizens with the transit opportunities they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Missy Owen, I don't think she's out there. Larry Gore. Michael Ray. Ron Seifert.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Ron Seifert. I'll go ahead and comment on the ATL package of projects that we're considering. I agree with the package as you have it. As I said a couple weeks ago, I think the I-285 BRT project with modifications will actually turn out to be the best project that the ATL considers for the entire region for improving interjurisdictional connectivity. That will be the #1 project that will have the best impact in the entire region on interjurisdictional connectivity. It does need some modifications to improve it from where it is right now. DeKalb DOT has already made similar recommendations to what I think Cobb County should be modifying. As far as Connect Cobb is concerned, you know, the problem with Connect Cobb is you've got a study where the environmental analysis for that study admitted, not me saying, the study itself admitted that if that project gets built as proposed, it will make future mobility in the corridor worse than if Cobb County does nothing. And I don't think we should be spending hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to make traffic congestion worse. So I agree with eliminating that project. And again, the study itself admitted that that project, as proposed, would make future mobility in the corridor worse than if we do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Chairman, that's all the ones that have signed up.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's move to the consent agenda, and just a couple admin notes here. We're moving item number 8 to the regular agenda, and that item will come right after we discuss the consent agenda. And then we've changed some of the wording in item number 28. We deleted a specific commissioner name and instead inserted a county representative as designated by the chairperson. So with that, we'll scroll through the consent agenda before I call for a vote. Okay, with that, I move to approve the consent agenda as revised and authorize the execution of the necessary documents by the appropriate county personnel.
Second.
Call the question. All in favor, passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, now we're on to regular, and the first one we have is district attorney, and the county manager will present that item.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I am here, myself and Bill Volkman tonight on behalf of Joyette Holmes, our district attorney, as well as Barry Morgan, our Solicitor General, both of which are attending a mandatory prosecutorial conference, or they would have been here this evening to discuss this item with the board. They did provide or have asked some of their investigative staff to be here in the event of questions as well. What we are doing tonight on behalf of Ms. Holmes and Mr. Morgan is to request that the board approve a non-cumulative payment to sworn staff in the district attorney's office as well as the Solicitor General's office. This is a similar request to that which was presented to the board on May 28th, 2019, whereby the board was advised and agreed to approving a one-time payment in the amount of $1,475 to the sworn staff in the PD, fire department, as well as the sheriff's office. We are requesting the same tonight on behalf of the district attorney's office as well as the Solicitor General's office. Did want to mention this is similar to the sheriff's office situation from a budgetary standpoint, in that there are not salary savings sufficient to fund this. Therefore, we are recommending that the payment be made utilizing a a fund balance appropriation by the board, similar to what we did for the sheriff's office in May 28th, excuse me. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, we would recommend that the board authorize measures to provide a one-time cumulative merit-based payment to sworn staff in the district attorney and Solicitor General's office who have had a satisfactory or higher performance rating per their 2018 rating period, authorize the corresponding budget transfers, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
So moved. Discussion.
I wasn't here the first time this was discussed, and I think it's important to note, I know there was a lot of discussion by other board members. These are sworn officers, and that's what distinguishes them from 911. I mean, the 911 are certified, but they are not sworn. And all of the non-cumulative pay that's been given to the other sworn officers, I think it's only right that the same treatment be given to the folks in the district attorney's office and the solicitor's office.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow?
Yes. I agree, and also when we first started talking about the one-time bonus for our police, fire, and sheriff, I guess these were overlooked, but they are sworn officers and post-certified and deserve the same thing. So I support this.
Commissioner, thank you, Commissioner Burrow. Commissioner Gamble?
While you can say this is only for sworn officers, we have to remember our fire department is certified. That way, they also receive the bonus, and thus, if we gave it to the fire department, they're gonna come back, the 911 operators are gonna want the $14.75 bonus as well, because they are certified, just like our fire department. In our budget discussions, I noted that $1.58 million was transferred out of fund balance just to balance their budget for next year. Also, my understanding, when this incentive was put forth, it was supposed to be for our first responders. So the officers that were first on the scene to address the emergencies. These were also the officers that are having to cover shifts in the sheriff's office and then also in the courthouse, which has drained the sheriff's budget and left him at zero funding. The officers in the Solicitor General's office and also the DA's office do not cover shifts that are open or available in the sheriff's office or the courtroom. They do a different job. Also, it has to be noticed that public safety was the one that funded their bonus, and the amount of money that they had was used to actually calculate the $14.75 based on the savings that they had. So this 1475 wasn't just pulled out of the air. It was based on what money was available divided by that number of officers. The DA and the solicitor are requesting this to essentially the board to increase their budget mid-year. If we had just enough budget last year to cover our expenses, we don't have additional funding available to increase a budget mid-year. By law, the board is not required to increase a budget mid-year and would have to leave it up to that department to find the funds to give a bonus if they shall choose. Interestingly enough, the DA nor the solicitor's office has requested to be included to the POAB that is being offered to our public safety officers. So are we going to have to come back later and do another budget item or vote, agenda item, to include them in the POAB? Again, they've known that this is out there as well. Why haven't they asked for that? We also, the board, and this was acknowledged by Commissioner Burrell, we just received a document yesterday that was signed by Director Register, Chief Kreider, Chief Cox, and Sheriff Warren, stating that, you know, they were together in the public safety to propose the step and grade. Again, there was no inclusion of the Solicitor General's office nor the DA in the step and pay, which again, to me, solidifies that they are one unit. And that is all.
Okay, well, let's, first, Commissioner Cupid? Okay, Commissioner Ott.
I just want to make a clarification. Firefighters are sworn, they're not certified. So firefighters are indeed the same as police officers, as sworn officials, not certified. So 911 is certified, firefighters are sworn.
Okay, because I was under the understanding that they were
Well, they're sworn.
certified.
They're sworn.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
And
Commissioner
these are
Burrow.
post-certified. This 1475 is one-time money, and for them, even though it's not coming out of their vacant positions or it's coming out of general fund balance, but it's one-time money. It's not gonna impact the budget for next year. It's one-time money for one-time bonus, period. Thank you.
However, we also use fund balance for our capital, which is supposed to be one-time expenditures. So again, we're going to be giving it to salary instead of capital needs that need to be done.
Okay, well,
We also have 1.5 million for capital in the budget we just passed.
well, we're wandering off here, but I'll be candid. If I just want to let if someone brought 911 back, I would probably support that too. All right, because again, this is exactly how we got into trouble. We start splintering off public safety. You know, it's all about public safety, and the good news this year is we have the resources to do it. So if it comes back, I don't want to be surprised that I would support it. So any other comments? Commissioner Cupid.
Just think by doing what's perhaps difficult, but appropriate in the front end keeps us from having to pay more on the back end. And by not providing, you know, merit year after year, I think puts us in these situations where now we are put in this position where we're splintering off employees from each other, and now even public safety employees from each other. And I agree with the chairman, regardless of sworn, certified, whatever the label is, we said we support public safety. And if we're looking at those who are on the ground, well, the bonuses for police didn't differentiate what police are on the ground, you know, or otherwise. Some of them may have other positions. And then, you know, you can say, well, the disparity is greater amongst police officers 0 through 5 or otherwise. We didn't make a differentiation there, but we could have. I mean, this is supposed to be in support of public safety. I think Commissioner Gambrell's detailed attention to this is not unreasonable, but I just think we're down this path because it was difficult for us to make the tough but probably the appropriate choices in the beginning. Since this agenda item has come out, I've spoken with staff over in the solicitor and the DA's office. And I believe that the work that these employees do is comparable to the employees who did receive the benefit of that bonus. So I'm apt to support it, but similar to the chairman, if 911 came, I'd be apt to support them because, I mean, they are also the lifeline of how we get calls, and they have to deal with the pressures of serving the public that need assistance from public safety. But with that, I'm in support of this agenda item.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Without any comment, I'll call the question. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Gamble in opposition. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hosack. Okay, on to DOT.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. We have 3 items for consideration this afternoon, and the first item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Paulette Tucker Enterprises, Inc., DBA Tucker Grading and Hauling, in an amount not to exceed $38,706.25 for demolition of 2 condominiums located at Forest Ridge Condominiums for construction of Windy Hill Road, Terrell Mill Road Connector.
Commissioner Ott.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you, sir. Our next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Accelera Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $178,300 for the demolition of 12 condominiums located at the Terrell Ridge Condominiums for construction of Windy Hill Road, Terrell Mill Road Connector.
Commissioner Ott.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the question. Sorry. Passes 5-0.
Okay, and then our last item is we're going to be asking the Board of Commissioners to consider the adoption of a resolution authorizing the submission of proposed Cobb Link transit projects to the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority for consideration and inclusion in the inaugural regional transit plan. The ATL announced a 2019 call for project submission for the development of their inaugural transit plan. Submittals are due at the end of the month and will be competitively reviewed for inclusion in the plan based on merit criteria. Project submission does not guarantee inclusion in the RTP, nor does it commit Cobb County to fund or implement the proposed projects. In order to be eligible for future state and federal funds, these projects must be included in the ATL's RTP of proposed projects. Inclusion of the proposed projects does not guarantee the availability, award, or approval of any future federal, state, or local matching funds. The department has identified 8 proposed projects for submission: a new South Cobb Transfer Center, relocation of the current Marietta Transfer Center, a new Cumberland Transfer Center, expansion of the Marietta Maintenance Facility, I-285 Managed Lane Bus Rapid Transit, Six Flags Area BRT project from the Six Flags area to the H.E. Holmes MARTA Station, traffic transit signal priority within the adaptive signal areas, and ADA compliant sidewalks, curb ramps, and crosswalks along various transit bus routes. Each proposed project will require subsequent board approval to authorize funding, construction, or implementation. Inclusion of each project in the ATL RTP is required before future grant funding can be identified or solicited. The ATL is scheduled to issue a call for projects annually. Therefore, projects may be removed or added based on plan recommendations, funding requirements, and prioritization. Projects are to be presented to the board for approval to proceed on an individual basis following inclusion in the ATL's RTP and identification of full project funding. Board authorization would then be required to apply for relevant federal and state grant program funding assistance. Board authorization would also be required to accept any grant awards offered and to establish individual project budgets that include required local match funding prior to proceeding with any project. So with that, we would like to request that the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution authorizing the submission of these 8 proposed Cobb Link transit projects to the Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority for consideration and inclusion in the inaugural regional transit plan, and authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
And for those at home, the slide says 9, but in fact, it's only 8
Yes,
projects.
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so
We made a revision of that. I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna, before I make my motion, I want to kind of explain where I'm coming from before I make the motion. Everybody knows, and Mr. Siphon kind of pointed out the fact that Connect Cobb, when the study came back, was seriously flawed in the fact that it specifically said that congestion was going to get worse as a result of putting it in place. So I think it's the right thing to remove it. The problem with the other 2 BRT projects is the studies aren't finished. And so, you know, Ron could be right, it could be the greatest thing since sliced bread, or it could come back with serious flaws similar to Connect Cobb. So I'm going to make a motion. I may not get a second. I may not get 3 votes, but I make a motion to approve the resolution with the removal of any reference to BRT and would direct staff to continue the studies on those. And if indeed that they warrant, or the study comes back and says that they would be good, then we can move forward. I mean, you know, and the chairman has said in the past that he has concerns about this item, period, because we haven't finished the CTP. Well, that's exactly the same issue here with the studies on the BRT. We know that BRT is incredibly expensive. We saw that with Connect Cobb. The routes for the I-285 managed lanes on the west wall, it's not finalized where the exits are going to be. So I think that putting that on the ATL's list is premature. So like I said, my motion is to approve this item, but without any of the BRTs in the resolution.
So that would,
Okay, we need, does everyone
that
want
would be the
does everyone-
transfer centers.
Right, so it would be the
3 transfer centers and.
oh, and yeah, the transfer centers, the signal prioritization, the ADA compliant ramp, and the maintenance facility. And Commissioner Burrow, I know you had some issues about the whether or not it was leased for the Cumberland. That is not decided. The county is still in early discussions with the
And
Cumberland
none of
Mall.
this includes funding anyway.
Right.
It's just to get it on the list for the ATL. But the concern is that our CTP study is not completed, and neither, our transit for the ATL, House Bill 930, it won't be done until, who knows, 2022
Well,
at then.
Let's have a second.
So-
Let's have a second first. So I'll second it for discussion purposes, although I do want to mention, we agreed yesterday what projects we were going to put on here.
I wasn't here.
I know, but I told you what they were. So, you know, but I'll second it for discussion, and now we can have a discussion on this new proposal.
Okay, so if we agree for you to submit these detailed for the ATL list, the deadline is the end of this month.
Yes, ma'am.
Before any federal funding or cost analysis or anything is done, if we are awarded anything, it would have to come back to us for a vote
Yes, ma'am.
regardless.
So the ATL project list, the ATL will actually be like a clearinghouse. So we'll submit projects to them, and they're going to evaluate those projects and determine, based on their evaluation criteria, if they are regionally and are projects that are going to be, regional significance. Once they're approved and in that project list, there's no funding associated with those projects. They're just approved as projects. At that time, we'll be able to apply for grant funds if it's through ARC or Federal Transit Administration, and have, a step checked off where it's been vetted. We will submit cost information on projects, so they can look at that and determine like rate of return, how that's going to look. But, when they approve that project, they won't be associating or attaching a dollar amount to that for
Yeah.
us to be able to apply for it in the future.
And some of these are already on SPLOST, so I'd hate to
Yes, ma'am.
to lose that additional funding that they're gonna need, because they're not, what's on the SPLOST, the estimate for SPLOST isn't gonna cover it
No, ma'am.
all. And, and we know that there's other funds for, like, the maintenance center, transfer center at
Yes, ma'am.
Marietta. But as long as there's no funding right now associated with this, it's just going on the list.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, if that could be specified, that there's no funding involved.
Yes, ma'am.
This is just to
Mhm.
present it on the list.
Yes, ma'am.
And will we see the description and all that you submit before it goes?
The application packets?
Mhm.
We can share those. We can share that information. They'll probably be fairly lengthy. I'm not sure how much
Yeah.
information, but we can provide that information for the board to review.
Okay, thank you.
Well, as it says in the revised agenda item, we have to identify the full project funding, so just to get reiterating, nothing will happen unless it comes back to this board to be voted on.
Yes,
Period.
sir.
1 cent's got to be voted on.
Yes, sir.
So, but anyway, more comment? Commissioner Campbell?
So Commissioner Ott, just to clarify, you're removing all the BRT projects? So including the 285 and I-20?
Were those the only two on there? I think that the agenda item was modified. Connect Cobb was already taken off, right?
Right, so you're
Removing the other
further
two.
merging those two?
Yes.
Okay. Those, believe it or not, were the two that I kind of supported.
Well, he's amending the recommendation. That's what he's doing. All right, so,
Right, I understand that. So my question was, so we're removing the I-285 and I-20, but then we also removing the transfer stations, or are they staying on?
Everything else stays on.
Everything else stays on. Okay.
And the sidewalks and curb ramps.
So just I-285 and I-20.
well, it goes back to the original list except for the sidewalks. That's the only new thing,
And the signals. Yes, sir.
and the signals.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, so the motion is that for the 5 projects, all right? The 5 projects are,
Six. It was 6, sir.
hold on, here, well, give me a second here.
Yeah, 'cause we're not-
Or 6, right, yeah.
Just for discussion, I mean, this is just a little bit of a different order. Typically, as in the past, as in the last 2 agenda items, this motion is for the DOT director to present. So it comes across as very odd to me that we have a commissioner taking the DOT director's motion and presenting
Well,
something
that-
other than what was.
That was my error, because Commissioner Ott is a liaison for DOT. I just did it to move the agenda item
I'm
along.
sorry, Chairman, but in other instances where you have other commissioners who are liaison for departments, I have not seen us take that motion like this.
Well, again.
And it's one thing if we present the item, but it's another thing for us to, in the middle of her providing her presentation, for another commissioner to provide that motion. And alter it.
Well, the thing that got me is that we agreed on the 6 projects yesterday. That's what's revision on. I didn't, 8, well, yeah, 8. I did not know there was gonna be a revision to the motion, okay? So, anyway, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. I second it for discussion purposes. So if you vote for this motion, then you agree to the 6 projects that he talked about. Okay, if you vote against it, then you don't agree with this motion. You understand that? Okay, so I'll call the question. So it passes 3-2 with Commissioner Cubit and Chairman Boyce in opposition. Okay, thank you, Garrick.
Thank you.
Commissioner, Buddy?
Yes, sir. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Finance has one item this evening. It's to adopt a supplemental bond resolution ratifying, confirming, and approving without limitation the acceptance of the lowest responsive bid for the Cobb County, Georgia Water and Sewer Refunding Revenue Bonds, Series 2019. I have good news. The bids were better than expected when we priced them on July 17th, thanks to the water system's strong credit rating. We got 15% NPV, which was a $12 million savings when we were expecting a $10 million savings, so it's good news. So with that, I recommend that the Board of Commissioners adopt the supplemental bond resolution, supplementing the original bond resolution as so supplemented, the 2019 bond resolution, authorizing, ratifying, and approving without limitation the following. 1, the issuance and sale of the Cobb County, Georgia Water and Sewer Refunding Revenue Bonds Series 2019 in the original aggregate principal amount not to exceed $78,550,000 pursuant to the terms and conditions of the 2019 bond resolutions. 2, the acceptance of the lowest responsive bid for the purchase of the 2019 bonds pursuant to the terms of and within the parameters established by the original bond resolution, and the award of the sale of the 2019 bonds to the lowest responsive bidder 3, the execution, delivery, distribution, and use of the official statement for the 2019 bonds. 4, the execution and delivery of the continuing disclosure certificate, the bond term certificate, and the Rule 10B-5 and Rule 12C2-12 certificates, the defeasance instructions, the paying agent, and the bond registrar agreement, the tax certificate and compliance agreement, and all other documents necessary or appropriate in connection with the issuance and competitive sale of the 2019 bonds, all in accordance with the terms and conditions of the 2019 bond resolution. 5, authorizing the chairman, the county manager, the finance director, comptroller, and the water system director of the county, each respectively, to take all other necessary or appropriate actions and to execute all necessary or appropriate documents to accomplish the foregoing, and 6, other matters related thereto.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Call the question? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, on to appointments. Commissioner Ott, you have the first 3.
Yes, and they're all announcements, so I'm just gonna kind of announce them all together because they're all for the same place. Just announce that, I've appointed Andy Smith, Ron Zeifman, and Frank Savini to the Transit Advisory Board. Frank is replacing Mike McNabb, so I want to thank Mike for his service. Ron continues to be willing to serve there, and Andy is replacing William Parker, who I thank him for his service.
Okay, and then my honor to announce the appointment of Stephen Foster and the reappointment of Dennis Winslow, Richard Moore, Valeen Carter, and Mark Templeton to the Workforce Development Board. All terms to expire on June 30th, 2022. And Stephen Foster is filling the vacant position. Now with that, I'll start with you, Commissioner Cupid, for commissioner comments.
First, I'd like to go to a flyer for the upcoming Cobb International Festival. This will hopefully be a first of several to come, and it will be held on Saturday, August 3rd, and is being put on with great assistance from those in Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs, and amongst staff and communications, assistance from Cobb Travel, amongst others. Lihia Flooring, the District 4 Transportation Engineer, has also been a part of our efforts, and including my last intern that was in the district. I'm not sure if the flyer is loaded, but maybe at some point we'll see it. But if not, please visit cobbinternationalfest.org for more information. Lastly, I'm a little taken back by our previous vote, and with all the commentary this evening about us limiting our budget. I think when we have opportunities to leverage other dollars, it's amazing that there's effort to limit how we can get other infusion of money on things that will be of benefit to our taxpayers. And as was provided tonight, the things that were put forward on our list was just to make us open and eligible for additional funding, and did not necessarily usurp our CTP, as we could have waited for that outcome and at least gotten those projects vetted over the past year. The CTP results will come forward in a couple of months. These projects will be vetted by the ATL again for consideration over a year time span. So we've limited that opportunity and will fall behind other counties instead of Cobb leading the way and utilizing or leveraging other tax dollars to benefit our taxpayers. So I just think this is a disappointment, at least to me here. I think it's a disappointment for those who've been advocating for these projects in several years past, and it just goes to show we have a lot of work to do to push Cobb at the forefront of making sure we're leading on our transit initiatives.
Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone that we have 2 upcoming meetings for our Parks Master Planning. On Wednesday, July 31st at 6:30 p.m., we'll be meeting at West Cobb Senior Center to go over the Price Park Master Plan. And then on Monday, August 5th, also at 6:30, the West Cobb Senior Center, we will be going over the Kemp Park Master Plan.
Commissioner Burrow?
I have some pictures. And, okay. CP, you got some pictures? There we go. Congratulations and thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Freeman, a 3.5-year veteran of the U.S. Navy. Thank you for your service. Mr. Freeman found his forever friend in Bowser, a 3-year-old lab mix. Mr. King, who was camera shy, but let's thank him for serving the U.S. for 2 years in the Marine Corps. He gave beautiful 3-month-old Elwin a forever home. That's the cat in the middle. And thank you to Mr. Barber for serving 4 years in the Army. We're grateful you gave this handsome lab his forever home. And thank you to Superior Plumbing, our sponsor for Superior Pets for Patriotic Vets, and our staff and supporters at Cobb County Animal Services. If you are or know of a veteran who would like to adopt a forever best friend, visit Cobb County Animal Services, complete the form, and select your forever new best friend. You can visit us on Facebook at Superior Pets for Patriotic Vets to see all the veterans that have found their forever friends and formerly homeless pets that have a forever home. We're honored to offer free adoptions for our military service heroes. And stay tuned because at our August 27th meeting, there's a big surprise and celebration in store. As you know, when this program started, we were fortunate enough to have a sponsor, Superior Plumbing, to donate money for 50 adoptions. When we got up to 48, they kicked in additional money to get us to 100. And we now have number 99 and 100, a cat and a dog, that you will get to see hopefully on August 27th, and another check for another 100 adoptions. So stay tuned, and please come on August 27th to show your support. Okay, on this Saturday, July 27th, Household Hazardous Waste Collection from Keep Cobb Beautiful. It's from 9 to noon at Jim Miller Park. And if you go to keepcobbbeautiful.com website, there's a list of what will be acceptable and what is not. And last but not least, on August 7th, Wednesday, August 7th, we'll have our next public input meeting for the parkland on Ebenezer Road that we purchased using the Parks Bond money. It's from 6:30 to 8 at the Noonday Baptist Church at 4121 Canton Road. So come and give us your input for the master plan. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Ott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First one I have is make an announcement. Congressman Loudermilk's office put out a press release this afternoon, but the county and DOT was notified today that the county is going to be receiving a $5 million grant, which will allow the completion of the Acres Mill ramp. Interestingly, it was done without a lobbyist, but instead by the hard work of our DOT staff, the CID, Congressman Loudermilk's office, and Senator Isaacson's office. So I just want to thank everyone that put in the effort. This is going to finish the project, which is going to make the managed lanes complete. Also, there's been, and I know Commissioner Cupid and I have been kind of sharing in the emails on this one, there was also a press release put out by the county and also Sterigenics. It's a company in Smyrna, in the county boundaries, that the process that they do, the vapors that are put out by that were recently, the designation was changed by the EPA. This was only a short while ago, and so it is a state issue, not a county issue. There are no incentives given by the county. The property is zoned heavy industrial. The use is in compliance with the code. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that the county's been working with our state representatives, Eric Allen, and also Jen Jordan. They are working with Sterigenics, and there'll be a press release put out by Sterigenics, what they've agreed to do to help reduce the emissions from their facility. So all of that's positive, but it is at the state level, not the county. However, we are trying to keep in touch with the county, the state representatives. School starts August 1st, so slow down and honor the stop times from the buses. You know, we've had some time off here without the kids and the buses out there, so when school starts, make sure that you slow down. August 6th, I will be having a town hall with the Coaches Club, and that starts at 7 o'clock. So come on out to that. Also today, I had the going on and watching our firefighters from the city of Atlanta and Cobb County. Folks in the district saw that there was a practice burn, and most time when you see that, you just think of the firefighters lighting it off and putting it out. What was unique about this was they were in an apartment complex, and it was a very detailed burn with underwater laboratories. Each apartment was configured exactly the same way, and one variable was changed. I got a tour of seeing all of the instrumentation and the cameras and everything that was put into each one of these apartments to gather useful data. For example, when you go to bed, close your door. We had a fire last week up in Kennesaw where the kids were in the bedroom with the door closed, the dad was in the garage, had fallen asleep, and they had a kitchen fire. Kids called 911 and their door had been closed. Fire department was able to rescue both the dad and the kids. So what Cobb and the underwater laboratories and everybody was working on today was to gather data. And this data is fed to a trailer. But the real interesting thing was it is also a joint program with the county schools, the STEM program, where the county firefighters go into the STEM classrooms with 8th graders, and they teach them about arson investigation, and they give them actual data for them to do an arson investigation. So it was a great program. And the last one I have, Mr. Chairman, is location of the commissioner's next retreat. On Friday, August 2nd, from 1 to 5, at the Sewell Mill Library, it is National Coloring Book Day Coloring Party. So that'll be the location of our next retreat.
Yeah.
We will need some instructor classes before we do that.
No, thank you.
Okay, just a couple things. First of all, I want to offer condolences to Mayor Steve Tumlin and his family and the loss of their daughter-in-law. I'm sure that's a tragedy that just goes beyond words, and our hearts go out in prayers to the whole family. Also, was surprised, like probably thousands of other people, that Mayor Macon is going to retire. And I want to wish him nothing but the best. He's been a legacy, and I know I'll miss him personally. He brings joy into your life. And as he goes into retirement, he can look behind and know that he has made a difference in this world. And I hope that we would all do as much as he's done for his community. Thursday, we'll be cutting the ribbon along with Commissioner Ott and hope any other commissioners on the Bob Callan Trail. Oh, okay, sorry. Well, all right, I'll be out there with you, but anybody else wants to come? I'll get an extra bicycle lap for you. That's a really incredible achievement to add to almost 60 miles of trails in this county, one of the unhidden gems, one of the hidden gems of Cobb County, the trail system we have in this county. And then last, I want to give a big thanks to Bill Volkman, Buddy Tazar, the entire finance team for all that they've done for this year's budget. I know that they responded to lots of requests from the commissioners and other people, and they did it without complaint and professionalism, and my hat's off to all that you do up there, Bill, and your team. You have a magnificent team. And just want to say congratulations to all you've done. You still can't go back to Denver, but I just want you to know that, you know, there's a reason that G4 recognized you and your team and Susan, and this year you really outdid yourself. Your ladies and gentlemen up there are the reasons we have a 5-star county, and because of your hard work with a passion and dedicated enormous amount of work to working on this proposed budget. And I'm proud to be able to say that when we say expect the best, you emulate all of that. So please let your team know how much we appreciate all you've done. And with that, we're adjourned.
CP?